Thank you, Chairman. We're now live streaming.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to Breckland Council's virtual planning committee meeting for today. This meeting will be live streamed on the council's social media channels and will be recorded. Once you join the meeting, please remain on mute, which avoids any unnecessary background noise disturbing the meeting. Controls to mute and unmute are displayed on your screen. At the end of this presentation, Julie Britton, our Democratic Services Officer, will take the roll call to confirm attendance. Could you please ensure that you unmute your microphone before speaking to confirm attendance, and then mute your microphone, as no response will assume that a planning committee member is not in the meeting. Each application has an allotted time slot. There may be an occasion when the time runs over, and therefore attendees will remain in the waiting room until such time that their application is ready to be heard. If for any reason the discussion finishes earlier than the time allotted slot, given the meeting will be paused. I will work through the agenda, inviting the ward member, applicant, etc. to introduce and speak on each time as appropriate. Attendees for each application will be held in the waiting room until such time that application is heard. Ward members in attendance who have registered to speak on an application will be asked to speak last. A speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes, or in the case of more than one objector or supporter wishing to speak, up to a maximum of 3 minutes in total will be needed to be shared. Where an applicant and their agent intend to speak, the 3 minutes is split between the two. Other than when speaking, speakers will remain on mute. If you try to speak when not invited to, you may be required to leave the meeting. I will then check with the Democratic Services officers in attendance. If there are any members who wish to ask a question, please do this by clearly raising your hand, and please remain on mute until invited to speak. I will seek declarations of interest in the usual manner. Members with a declaration should indicate this by raising their hand. The Democratic Services officer in attendance will invite the councillor to unmute and declare their interest to the chairman. This councillor will, at the relevant time, be removed from the meeting and placed in the virtual waiting room until discussion and voting on that item has completed, after which they will return to the meeting. Once the application has been discussed and all questions answered, I will put forward the officer's recommendation. The Democratic Services officer will then invite each councillor to speak in turn. If any member should experience IT issues during the presentation and does not ask for it to be repeated, they will be unable to vote on that application. For each item, all members will need to confirm that they have heard the application in full before the vote is taken. A roll call will be given for each member to cast their vote, either for, against, or abstain. Please can I remind members that they will need to unmute themselves when responding. I will now hand over to our Democratic Services officer to take the roll call, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkin.
Here.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Here.
Councillor Atterwill.
Here.
Councillor Bowes. Councillor Brame.
Here.
Councillor Marion Chapman-Allen.
Present. I'll remember to unmute myself this time.
Councillor Clark.
Here.
Councillor Crane. Councillor Dale.
Here.
Councillor Digan.
Here.
Councillor Gilbert.
Here.
And Councillor Martin.
Here.
Thank you,
Thanks, Julie. Okay, members, we will start this morning. I've lost half the day. We will start this afternoon, should I say, with item 1, which is the minutes. I'm assuming that you've all read them. If anyone wishes to raise issue on a minute, could they show? If not, I will take it that the minutes are agreed by all the members. Okay, thank you. Item 2, apologies and substitutes. Julie, do we have any at all?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Crane, who's in attendance as ward representative for the Bradnam item. but she's not here. But Councillor Crane is not here for the full meeting. And I have Councillor Kybird present as Councillor Crane's substitute.
Thank you. Can I just say for the roll call, Councillor Bowes has joined now. She's on my screen anyway. Okay, so a minute that Councillor Bowes is present.
But yeah,
Thank you.
Apologies, I had Wi-Fi issues.
That's fine, no problem, as long as you're recorded as being here. Item 3, declarations of interest and/or representations received. Could I? I'll take them as each item is raised. Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If you allow me this, I understand that having looked at social media this morning, that some people in Watton may have tuned into this meeting expecting to see the Lidl application considered. Can I assure them, and through you, Mr. Chairman, that that application is not on the agenda today because it is still out for public consultation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. I'm sure anyone who was listening in will probably stay and enjoy the afternoon. If not, they'll go off and have a jolly time somewhere else. Okay, item 4, Chairman's announcements. I was going to tell you how many sleeps to Santa, but I've been told not to, so I'm not going to do it. I just wanted to raise a point that I want to give my heartfelt feelings towards all my staff and officers on the planning department who are working in all areas. I mean, we've got a lot at home, we've got some who are out on site, and we've got skeleton staff in and out of the office, and they're doing an extremely good job in very difficult circumstances. And I'd like to say congratulations to all of them and keep up the good work. Okay, thank you. Item 5, Rebecca, we have requests to defer any applications?
None today, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And while you're still on, do we have any items of urgent business, which is item 6?
None today, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we go over to number 7, which are local plan update. We have Simon Wood for that. Over to you, Simon.
Okay, just making sure I go off mute. I've got a terrible habit of not doing it. Just very briefly, Chairman, following the government's consultation on the standard housing methodology, the government's chosen for the meantime to continue with the previous methodology. They have released those figures, and Breckland has a delivery requirement of 661 dwellings per year, which compares with the previous requirement of 612 dwellings per year. This will feed into the local plan review or the new local plan when work starts on that. We've also received the results of the housing delivery test in the last couple of weeks, and this shows that the delivery of housing within Breckland over the last year is 110%, with 100% meaning that you're delivering against your requirement. So 110% means that we're delivering slightly over our requirement. This calculation has had regard to the impact of COVID. It's calculated 2020 over an 11-month period. What it means for the council is that we don't have to provide any action plan, and we don't have a presumption in favour of sustainable development. And also we're able to utilise the 5% buffer within the 5-year housing land supply calculation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Attawell, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Simon, for the update. It's now over 6 months since the local plan working group met. The government's chief planner and the housing minister, Christopher Pincher, have urged councils to update their local plans. Now, is this the plan now you've got this housing figure? Is the plan to resume the local plan working groups? Because for the public, I'm concerned they might think we're asleep at the wheel at the moment with not a lot of action or consultation or oversight, and I'd really like to see this kick-started because I think it's critical for these communities. We do need to review this local plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I've seen the correspondence from the Chief Planner and I've seen the correspondence from Mr. Pincher, and we are in discussions with the portfolio holder for planning as to the next steps in respect to the local plan and the local plan working group, and we'll feedback once we've had those discussions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at all on this item? No, thank you. Okay, item 8 is deferred applications, which we've got none to take today. If we have, they've obviously been blended in, but I don't think there is any. So we go to our next item, which are our applications for today, our agenda items. And our first one on today is for Bragnham 3PL 2020-0995F. And we have 2 speakers who are in attendance now, which is the Reverend Jane Atkins, who's the applicant, and Councillor Helen Crane, who's the ward representative. But I hand over to Rebecca Collins, please, for the presentation. No, I don't.
I'd like to hand over to Lisa O'Donovan for the presentation, please, Chairman.
Oh, you would on that one? Yes, fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is for a single-storey, 3-bedroom dwelling on a garden infill plot in the parish of Bragnham. Bragnham is defined in the local plan as a village with a boundary where policy HAL 5 allows for some development which is regarded as sensitive infilling or rounding off. However, the policy does go on to state that for sporadic small-scale groups of dwellings are considered as lying in open countryside, and these are considered isolated locations in the countryside and are unlikely to be considered acceptable. I can't seem to scroll through the presentation, sorry. The site is approximately 600 metres outside of the easternmost notable edge of the main Bragnham parish. And as a result of that distance, the proposal has failed to meet this part of the policy and therefore not considered a sustainable location for development. And whilst it is noted that the site is close to Shipdham, it is over a mile to the high street along a busy, largely unpaved section of road. So occupants are likely to be highly dependent on travelling by car. As a result, the proposal is not considered to meet the aims of policy HAL 5, and the principle of development here is not considered acceptable. In design terms, the building, as you can see, is sensitive and takes into account the form and character of dwellings either side. It's a relatively modest size, and both resulting plots, both the existing and proposed, will remain spacious. Amenity impact, as you can see here, the dwelling sits in the site but leaves sufficient separation distances either side. The garage is on the shared boundary with the neighbour, so there'll be no neighbours, no windows that will create any overlooking, and the orientation of the site is such that overshadowing isn't considered to be an issue. In terms of highway impact, a new access point is proposed which will involve a small section and removal of hedgerow. The Highways Department has raised no objection. They acknowledge that the site will leave the occupants highly reliable on travelling by car. However, given the modest scale of development proposed, no objections are raised subject to condition. And in terms of the loss of the hedgerow, given the small section and the fact that it's a garden boundary hedge, there's no objection from the Tree and Countryside officer in this instance either. So that's the site looking towards the neighbouring property. And this is the host dwelling. And the frontage hedgerow there. So in conclusion, whilst the proposal is acceptable in design and amenity and highway safety terms, it's the principle of development here that isn't considered sustainable and doesn't comply with HAL 5, and that's why we're recommending refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's me getting some feedback. Reverend Atkins, please, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We moved to Norfolk 16 years ago because I found a job here as a rector of nearby Ashfield group of churches, and we just fell in love with the county and its people. We sold our house in Leicestershire about 7 years ago and bought the Pykel because we do love that rural location. We started to make improvements, and then out of the blue, my husband John was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He also caught the COVID virus nearly a year ago and suffers from loss of strength, among several other symptoms. We're key workers as religious staff, so it's important that I can continue to serve the community now and in the future. And having close family support in these difficult times would be of benefit, obviously, to myself and for the care of my husband. We love Norfolk, and so does our son, Leon. We're not asking permission to build a housing estate, nor to build for profit. We just want one bungalow for our son to support us. We've had some fabulous support from our architects, Clayland, who ensured that we remained within planning policy as much as we could. Indeed, the Bradnam Parish Council did not object to this one bungalow. It will be an infill plot between our bungalow and our neighbours, and recent appeal history shows loose clusters of housing can be considered as such. Also, it can be considered infill if there is existing development on either side. It's within 10 minutes walk of Bradnam and within cycling distance of the nearest bus stop and Shipton, and so is within a suitable distance for public transport. It's also been shown to the satisfaction of planners that there's no flood risk, no overlooking, and no adverse impact on our amenity or the neighbours. We therefore believe that the new bungalow fits in within planning policy, as well as being a carefully and beautifully designed bungalow for our son and his family, to allow them to live and work within Norfolk. The best future that John and I can have is to have Leon's family's help, and the only way that Leon can have a house for his family in here in Norfolk is to build one. His family would not only be a help and comfort to us, but I believe that it would be an asset to Bradnam and to Norfolk. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crane, please. 3 minutes also.
Thank you, Chairman. I am happy to speak in support of this application. Breckland is rural in nature, as we all know, and the settlement boundaries were removed from some villages, Bradnam included, as this limited development in these villages that had few services. Policy HOU 5 seeks to address development needs in these villages whilst minimising impact on the countryside and allows appropriate small-scale development to meet local needs. This application demonstrates a local need. Under Policy HOU 5, I consider this is infill development. It is a large garden plot between two existing properties, one which is owned by the applicant, of which the plot is part of, and the application is for a bungalow for her son and family. Infill is defined as building taking place on a vacant plot on a built-up street frontage, and to fulfil this criteria, the development site should have development on either side, which this plot has. It should have also have access immediately to the highway. This site does. The scale and design is of a high standard, incorporating the Lifetime Homes narrative, allowing for adaptability. The application does not harm or undermine a visually important gap in the character and distinctiveness of the rural scene. This will be a much needed self-built dwelling for this family, and I suggest that this application meets the criteria in HOU 5 policy. The applicant has shown justification in the supporting documents that you will have read. NPPF rural housing states, in rural areas, planning policies and decisions should be responsive to local circumstances and support housing development that reflects local needs. And as Reverend Jane has said, the support of her son and his family next door will be immeasurable. NPPF planning policy states that to promote sustainable development in rural areas, housing should be located where it will enhance or maintain vitality of rural communities. If we have absolutely no building for families, then a community cannot be enhanced. Indeed, it is referenced that planning policies should identify opportunities for villages to grow and thrive, especially where this will support local services. I would add that where there are groups of smaller settlements, development in one village may well support services in a village nearby. This application is within cycling distance of Shibcombe, a service centre village, where there are 2 shops, a post office, garages, hairdresser, dog groomer, and a pub. There is also adequate primary school provision. Children from Bradnam have access to county transport to this school and also the 2 Dereham high schools. I hope the planning committee will look favourably on this application and give them permission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. It's open to questions from members. Anyone wishing to ask a question on this item? No. Were you holding your hand up, Peter, or not?
Councillor Clark.
All right, Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a question for the officer. Are there any properties in the vicinity that have been given permission recently or have been refused? Thank you.
Councillor Clark, I'm not sure that would be relevant to this planning application, whether there's permissions granted in the location. We can obviously look that up about but with regards to the relevance, it's likely that any in the vicinity, unless Councillor Crane wants to come back in and the chairman's happy to, would have been permitted under the old local plan. And obviously we've assessed this under the current local plan and the council's position with regards to 5-year housing land supply and based our recommendation in that regard.
I understand that. Thank you.
That's all. Thanks. I've got Councillor Bowes, then Councillor Chapman-Allen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, listening to the report, it just struck me that the officer's recommendation does hang on the application being isolated. So I took the opportunity to look up the meaning of isolated in the Cambridge Dictionary, and it says it means not near other things of the same kind. Well, there are 2 dwellings. The application will be between the 2 other dwellings. So if the Cambridge Dictionary is anything to go by, it's not isolated.
Rebecca.
Can I just clarify in this regard? So we're in policy HAL 5, councillors. This is a village without a settlement boundary. The wording's taken directly from policy HAL 5, which says that farmsteads and sporadic small-scale groups of dwellings. So we're saying as 3 dwellings, this is a sporadic small-scale group of dwellings. It doesn't form part of the main village network. Laying in the open countryside, which it does because it's outside a settlement boundary, and not classed as a small village or hamlet. So I've just explained that. And the policies, your policy members, of which you've got to consider it, said these and isolated locations. So these and isolated locations, so we're not saying it's isolated, are unlikely to be considered acceptable. So what we've said to you as officers, we've directly interpreted HAL 5. We're saying this is a sporadic group of dwellings. It lies outside the main village or hamlet settlement, and therefore development here, despite being infill, and we accept that it could arguably be infill development, this is a separate part of the policy, is unlikely to be considered acceptable in this location. That's what your policy says, members.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman-Allen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Lisa, just for clarification, I might have missed it on the report. Could you tell me why the hedgerow, which would sustain, looking by the size of it, quite a lot of wildlife, why it has to be removed?
It's only a very small section that requires removal to create a new point of access.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this might be a bit hypothetical, but if this proposal was in a street scene where it had 5 properties each side of it,
but it's not,
would that then be considered infill? I'm struggling with this. I can see it as infill and I can see it as development in the open countryside both ways. So I think this is one of those 49-51 decisions to
This
make.
is yeah, thanks, Councillor Gilbert. There aren't 5 dwellings, so there are only 2 at present, and we are talking about an infill. This is why, from the chairman's panel, the agreement to bring it to the committee was the fact of weighing that up. And yes, it is a 49-51, exactly as you've put it, and that's why it's here today. Whether members deem it acceptable as an infill plot, or whether policies outweigh that issue in your minds. Rebecca, please.
Absolutely agreed, Chairman. And just to reread it for you members, it said in these locations in the countryside, they're unlikely to be considered acceptable. So members are able to take into consideration other matters that have been raised here today. With regards to infill, that's specifically a separate part of the policy. So members will need to take into consideration that there are other material considerations, which is particularly acceptable for you to do so, and some of them that we've heard here today from Jane Atkins.
Could I also add that if you were going to build anywhere, the views from this area are absolutely stunning across the open countryside. It's fantastic. I mean, everyone says Norfolk's flat, but wow, when you sit there and it goes down a sort of slight valley, which is something that's unknown in Norfolk. We don't know what valleys are. Okay, any other members wishing? If not, I will then follow through for the vote. No, you're all finished. Okay, so can I confirm, could you just raise your hands to confirm that you've all heard the application in full before the vote is taken? Can I just have a show of hands for taking the vote? Yes, you're all there, right, thank you. Hands down. Okay, Julie, can you take the vote, please? The officer's recommendation for this one is one of refusal. So I need you to either agree the refusal or go against it if you wish. Julie?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson?
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Atterwill?
Against.
Councillor Bowes?
Against the recommendation.
Councillor Brame?
Against.
Councillor Marion Chapman-Allen?
Against.
Councillor Clark?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Dale?
Against.
Councillor Dygan?
For.
Councillor Gilbert?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Martin?
Against the recommendation.
And Councillor Kybird?
For the recommendation.
5 approving the refusal and 6 against.
Okay. From the floor, can I have your reasons for going against the officer's recommendation, please? It's all gone quiet. Councillor Wilkinson, you were first. Did you want to do? Oh, Councillor Atterwall's got his hand up. Councillor Atterwall, please.
I didn't vote against the recommendation, so I can't give you the reasons. The committee members must give you the reasons who voted against it.
Oh, sorry, I had you. Sorry, wrong way. Sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Atterwall.
Quite simply, Chairman, I think it on this occasion does comply with policy HOU05. Given the wording in the policy, I think this is acceptable development.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Brame, thank you. Rebecca, before I take the vote, would you wish to add?
Mike, can we get a reason why it complies with policy HOU5? If it's acceptable, Chairman, what I heard from members of the planning committee is that they felt it was acceptable development, and there were other material planning considerations that were raised. For example, the applicant has proposed it's a self-build dwelling. the remainder of the wording in that policy are unlikely to be considered acceptable, and therefore I would think about your other material considerations which you can take into consideration when reaching a decision, members.
Can I ask
well,
can we ask Mr. Horn to give us some advice on this then, please?
are you prepared, Mr. Horn?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. As Rebecca has just said, taking everything into consideration, there are the committee believes that there are other factors that on this occasion makes this proposed development acceptable. Of course, in reaching that conclusion, you are referring to planning considerations, not personal circumstances.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation from the members overturning the officer's recommendation, could I have a recall of that, please, Julie?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson?
For the recommendation of the officer.
So you voted against the approval?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, yes, voting against the approval.
Councillor Attewell?
For.
Councillor Bowes?
Sorry, for.
Councillor Brame?
For.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
For.
Councillor Clark?
Against.
Councillor Dale?
For.
Councillor Digan?
Against.
Councillor Gilbert?
Against.
Councillor Martin?
For.
And Councillor Kybird?
Against.
Same again. Okay. Okay. Well, this item is approved. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chairman, can we please deal with conditions being delegated to the Director of Planning, please?
Yes, and Rebecca wishing to come in?
I hate to labour with regards to conditions, but members, can I be clear, or Mike, can I be clear? Am I approving this on the grounds that it's self-build and therefore we'll add a self-build condition? Are you happy with that, Chairman?
Yes, I'm happy with it by all means.
That's great. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you, members. Thank you, Reverend. Oh, you've gone, have you? Oh, no, Reverend Atkins. Thank you very much. This item is approved. Good luck with that. Thank you. Oh, we're way over our time. That's good. Can we move to Mattershall, which is a tree preservation order 2020 number 02. And we've got Hugh, I think it's joined us somewhere. Yeah, down the bottom there. You're there, Hugh. Okay, Hugh, do you want to do your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Becky, do you put the PowerPoint on for me, please? Is that possible?
Yes.
Thank you.
1 second.
Well, I can give you a brief outline. It's a TPO on a mature oak tree on Mill Road in Mattershall. Shown there with the little round circle. It's one of the, there's a sort of a broken row of mature trees along the Mattershall, along the Mill Road in Mattershall that were probably once part of a historic hedgerow field boundary. These bungalows and houses were built, I believe, in around the 1940s, so that the trees predate the houses. The circumstances behind this TPO are that number 18 Mill Road was up for sale last year. The person who was interested in buying the house, who was in the process of buying the house, was also asking for quotes to fell the oak tree in the front garden once the sale went through. So they wanted the house, but they didn't want the oak tree, essentially. Having received a couple of phone calls from local contractors, I went and had a look at the tree. I don't know if you can just put the next slide on, please, Becky. And this is the tree in question. So as you can see, it's quite a prominent tree on the road frontage, reasonably close to the bungalow. So the TPO was put in on the tree. The sale went through. The person buying the house on the understanding that there were no protected trees, but in the meantime, the preservation order was placed on the tree. Therefore, they couldn't fell it as they'd hoped to when they moved in. They're objecting mainly on the grounds of the tree being overbearing, causing slippery surfaces, abundance of leaves and acorns, concern that it may cause structural damage to the house, although there is no evidence of any structural damage to the house. There is some minor lifting of the driveway, which they are concerned is a trip hazard, which I think is shown there. As you can see, I do consider that to be quite minor. They also had a report as part of their objection provided by a local contractor, which was fairly inconclusive. So I did speak to the applicant and said they may want to have some diagnostic tests done on the tree to see if the structural integrity of the tree was compromised. They did have a PICA survey, which is like an ultrasound, which tests the integrity of the wood, and they also did some resistance drilling to test the integrity of the wood. It has shown that there is some decay on the main trunk, although the conclusion of the report that was provided was that it's not sufficient to warrant any work to the tree at present, and the tree is not considered to be unsafe or unstable. However, the recommendation of the report is to have another look at the tree in a year and a half's time to see if the decay has progressed at all. I mean, what tends to happen with trees, if there is decay or if there's a fungal pathogen, the tree can compartmentalize the decay to prevent it spreading any further. So this being the first test, it's not clear whether the decay will spread any further or won't. It may be that the tree will continue to put on compensatory growth and that the decay won't get any worse, but there's no way of telling us until another test is done in a year and a half or 2 years' time. So the choices are, as always with these new TPOs, is to allow the appeal, which will result in the tree being cut down, or confirm the TPO. And my recommendation is obviously to confirm the TPO.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. Any questions for Hugh while we've got him on screen? Councillor Attawell, please.
Yeah, just quickly, Hugh. Is there any danger to the footings of the house, being the tree is so close to it?
I mean, you only get damage generally if there's on a clay soil. So there's been nothing provided to show that there's any structural damage to the house. The house was only built in the 1940s, and like I said, the tree was already present. So it's likely that the foundations would have been built, you know, taking into account the presence of the tree, so they would have been quite substantial. As far as I know, the applicant hasn't suggested that there is any signs of structural damage, so it would seem, you know, that the house has been there for what, 60 years without any damage. It would seem unlikely that any damage would happen in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. No more questions at all? Okay. Everyone, can I just have a show of hands? Everyone that's understood and heard all of the presentation, please. Okay, I think that's everyone's got. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Marion. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, we're going to take the vote on this, and the officer's recommendation is that we retain the TPO order. So could I have 4 to retain the TPO order, against if you don't wish to? Councillor Chapman, are you asking a question or?
No, Chairman, I was going 4. Sorry.
Oh, now we're going to go. We're going to. You've jumped the gun a bit there. We're going to take your name. Over to you, please, Julie.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Attawell.
For.
Councillor Bowes,
For.
Councillor Brame,
Abstain.
Councillor Marion Chapman Allen,
For.
Councillor Clark,
For.
Councillor Dale,
For.
Councillor Digan,
For.
Councillor Gilbert,
For.
Councillor Martin,
For.
and Councillor Kybird.
For.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Unanimous, apart from one abstention.
That's
Is that what you
correct.
get? Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Hugh. This is
Right.
approved your TPO.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
1400. Oh, 20 minutes. What? Rebecca, you do realise I can see your face?
I think the next one's at 1:45, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes,
Attleborough
Chairman.
1:45, so 4 minutes.
Oh, sorry. 45, yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I've got my mouse on top of the time. I do apologise. Okay, we're just 4 minutes in and then we're ready to fly.
Thank you, Chairman. It's now 1:45.
Thank you. Okay, members, we're moving on to an item in Attleborough, which is 3PL 2020 1335. And we should have Oliver Jones, who's the agent, joined us. Yes, I can see you in the corner there. And so I'll hand over, please, to Simon Wood for the presentation of this one.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This application is, oh, I'll share my screen first. It'd help if I knew what I was doing, wouldn't it? Can you all see that? Excellent stuff. Okay. So this application is before members because there is a member interest. It's also transpired that since the report and recommendation was finalised and the agenda published, there is also an officer interest in the application. I don't propose to go into any details about that because of GDPR restrictions, but other than to say that it has been properly declared. The application seeks temporary plan permission for the change of use of an agricultural dwelling to a holiday let. The permission would be for 12 months and would allow the applicant to market the premises. You can see there the site of the property in the center of your screen. This is a substantial 6-bedroom detached property. You can also see here its location in relation to Attleborough. It's approximately 1.4 miles from the center of Attleborough and 0.9 miles from the centre of Great Ellingham. You can see there its location in a small group of buildings, and that gives you the site plan. As you can see, there's plenty of space within the site for parking. Just fly through the photographs, give you some idea of the scale of the property, because that is pertinent to the recommendation that's before you, given the level of accommodation that it offers. It can offer accommodation for up to 16 people, which is fairly unique within this locality. If I just go back to the site plan, this application has been assessed against policy EC07 in the local plan and is found to be in broad compliance with it for the reasons stated in the report. In terms of the agricultural occupancy condition, if there's been no application approved in terms of that, then when the 12-month temporary permission lapses, the agricultural occupancy condition would remain in force. The 12-month period, as I've already indicated, is to enable marketing to take place as required by the relevant policy within the local plan. You'll also be aware that there's no objection from Attleborough Town Council or from the local highway authority. There is a letter within your supplementary report, and I will assume, unless told otherwise, that everybody has read that letter. I'll now stop sharing and hand back to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We've got Oliver Jones, please, who's the agent. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thanks, Chairman. I didn't really intend to speak much more than just say that the applicant was intending to seek it for a temporary use, not a permanent use. The intention was that it was to be a holiday let aimed at stag and hen parties or something similar, and to try and bring some economy back into the area. There was nothing more indicated than it was to be a temporary use while they marketed the house properly in relation to agricultural condition. I didn't really have anything else to add other than that, really.
Okay, thank you very much. It's open to any questions from members at all. No. Oh, Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just a bit confused by the agent then speaking, saying we are giving it over to, well, looking to change it to holiday let. Then you were saying something about bringing the economy to the area for stag parties and hen parties or something or other. Well, that's taken into the business realm. Can you just clarify that, please?
Mr. Jones.
It was only because that was one of the, just because of the size of the property, that it can accommodate those types of parties. It wasn't that that was its sole purpose or its sole use. It was just that because of the size of the property, that it could accommodate those types of things. It wasn't that that was the only thing it was going to be marketed for.
Okay, thank you. I know the solicitor's got his hand up, so I'm going to take solicitor, but just along those lines of Shirley, I would have thought stag and hen parties come under the same label as holiday accommodation type thing. Mike, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just make it clear for the record that the member interest is not a member of Planning Committee, hence why no one member from Planning Committee has actually departed from the room. This is being brought to committee because the member concerned, in accordance with normal procedure, is a member of the council, not of Planning Committee.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, any further questions? Oh, Councillor Attawell, please. And then Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think Councillor Wilkinson's question's been fully answered. If we're going to have stag and hen parties, does that mean we're going to have the playing of music, etc. on site? I'd like that clarified, please, because to me that isn't a holiday let. That is a party venue, not a holiday let. So I just want some clarification on where we stand in terms of policy, please.
I haven't got my legal officer at the moment. Mr. Hall, would you? Or Simon?
No,
sorry.
I'll come back on that, Chairman. In policy terms, we're looking to whether it meets policy EC07. The fact that it may be used by hen or stag parties is not definitive, and it's still a tourist use as such. The property is fairly well isolated, so hopefully that there won't be noise and disturbance from it. Tourism is considered to bring benefit to the local economy. I know when I go and stay in tourist accommodation in various parts of the country, for some reason we manage to spend quite a bit of money. So yeah, in policy terms, it's not really totally relevant, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. Whilst it's a temporary permission application, 12 months seems quite a short period given the potential for marketing for other uses. Is that defined by any formal statute, or is that just an officer opinion of the length of time?
I'm not sure how much we can say on that. Simon, please.
Yeah, I think the application form is quite clear in why they're seeking a 12-month period, and that is to allow marketing to take place. The policy within the local plan does require marketing to take place when considering the removal or variation of agricultural occupancy condition. And my understanding, and again, it's mentioned in the application and the public documentation, there is that it is for 12 months to enable that to take place.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, no further questions. Okay, thank you. So on this item for Attleborough, 3PL 2020-1335.
Sorry, Chairman. I just caught Councillor Brain raised his hand to raise a question. Sorry, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor. Very difficult. There's so many screens. Yes.
Oh, you're doing a grand job, Chairman.
That's okay.
This is a rather a lot of screens to go with. In the application, it says it will be 1 year from the date of change of permission. I'm just wondering, under the present circumstances, whether that should be a little bit more flexible, because it's obviously going to go into what they can and can't do under the present circumstances. They may not be able to start for another 8 months. We don't know where hospitality is going. So I just wonder if it's a bit tight on the starting from the day of application.
Yeah, I think I share your concern, but I think they have their reasons for that, and they can always come back as another application. Okay, thanks. So on this application, can I have a show of hands that you've actually heard all of the presentation and are prepared to go for a vote? Yes, thank you. That's all. Okay, Julie, could I please take the vote? And the vote for this one for 3PL 2020-1335 is one of approval. So could I have approval, please, or refusal? Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson?
For.
Councillor Atterwell?
For.
Councillor Bowes?
For.
Councillor Brain?
For.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
For.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Dale?
For.
Councillor Dygan?
For.
Councillor Gilbert?
For.
Councillor Martin?
For.
And Councillor Kybird.
For.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
unanimous.
That's unanimous. Can we get Rebecca back in, please? I'm not sure who's in control of that. Is that you, Julie, or not?
I'm now admitting her.
Oh, good. Okay, you're back here with us. Thank you. I did have a message that we had someone from Beatley Parish Council. I was trying to read it and do everything else. What was that about? The clerk of Beatley Parish Council, is that? Who sent me that?
Hello, it's Steve Boyce here. The chair.
That's cleared that up, Chairman. What it was is Steve Boyce is on Brian Lee's account, so I'll just change his name so it's clear.
Right. Mr. Jones, we've still got Mr. Jones on. We don't need you here, Mr. Jones. That's been approved. That's better. Okay, so we've I'm just trying to check who we've got here. Got Diana Calvert and Councillor. I think we're all on.
Diana Calvert is critical.
Right, so sorry. So I've got Steve Boyce, but that's actually Brian Lee. Is that correct?
No, this is Steve Boyce, the chair of Beatley Parish Council.
Right, okay. Okay, got you down there, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman, could you either put me in the waiting room or can I mute, stay on mute, because I know the chairman of the Parish Council at Beatley. Thank you.
Mike?
Sorry, is that a declaration of interest, if I might ask, Councillor Clark? Because if it is,
yes, it is. It's not a pecuniary interest.
Okay.
Sorry, Mike, you're on mute.
Sorry, Mike, you've gone on to mute.
Thank you. So, Councillor Clark, you're saying it's not a prejudicial interest, but it's a personal interest. So you've declared it and you're not going to take part in any of the discussions or the vote. Thank you.
Okay, sorry guys, just sort this in. Right, so, okay, we're all there now. Thank you, sorry for the delay, just got to sort everyone out. So we've got application at Beatley 3PL 2020-0750. And I've got Chris Hobson, who's the officer on this case. If you'd like to put it forward, please, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can you see that in front of you now? We've got the presentation. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll proceed. So it's item 10B. So that's the Beatley in District Preschool off Fakenham Road in Beatley. So on pages 68 to 80 of the committee report pack. We can see the site there, edge red, within that front image, and we can also make out the primary school just to the southeast of the site, so the existing primary school, and again the site proposed in that area of open space just to the northwest. The site in context to the settlement boundary, edge red, you can see it sits just outside in that area of open space with car park fronting Fakenham Road, with woodland to the north, and there's the site in more greater context, an aerial view. We've got the Elmham Road running due northeast, where the existing preschool is accessed off, apologies, and located in this location here. In terms of the site, that's the application site there, edge red, and the existing car park there. Visible proposals would utilise that existing car park with footpath located and shown by the dark black line there that already links the school, but will then form access to the preschool building. So these are the views taken from Fakenham Road. You see the open space there, and the site for the proposed building is located to the far end there in that top corner. And the view from the car park and the existing access. So we've got the existing surface car park, so that at the minute is used by this existing primary school. I suppose that would then be used for the nursery as well, with improvements to increase the number of parking spaces there. And that's the view of the site, the preschool building itself. You can see the woodland beyond, and in this location, the outdoor space of the primary school. And that's the view from the public right-of-way, which runs north to the west of the site. And behind us are residential properties. You can see the view to the school there. And these are some of the residential properties on Fakenham Road and those closest to the proposed preschool building. And those that sit directly on the opposite side of Fakenham Road there, we've got a mixture of residential properties in the vicinity, and those you can see in the image there. So in terms of the proposals, it is for a new preschool facility. So it would essentially mean the existing facility relocated from within the school complex to the area of open space there. We can see footpath linking to the existing footpath, and the building there with outdoor amenity space, which would be secured with further details to be submitted and approved. So we've got an internal layout, so it's proposed to have 2 school classrooms. We've got internal space in terms of catering, toilets, and the usual facilities in terms of receptions, communal lobbies, etc. Relatively simple construction, modular form. Conditions are recommended to get some further detail on the materials and colours, and that's the indicative visual representation of the site. And we also had proposals for improvements to the car parking area. So the majority of additional spaces would be created through altering the layout here, providing additional 7 parking spaces with 2 more here and 1 there. So and that's just to show you the existing site of the preschool. So the proposals are a replacement facility. They would enhance and increase the capacity, so it would go from 24 children to 44. Now, the application has received a number of representations locally. We've got 58 in support and 12 against, and also an objection from the parish council. A number of those issues and matters are set out in the committee report in front of you. We've also had a further representation from the parish council, which was received late last week, and that just adds some further information on the position in terms of land ownership. So the land is owned by Beatley Parish Council, and on the land is a restricted covenant. Now, in the report, that clarifies that a restricted covenant is not a material planning consideration. In terms of the other issues raised by the parish council in this additional representation, they also highlight that there isn't an agreement in place between the applicants and themselves in terms of bringing forward the preschool building itself. And in terms of their position, they would maintain an objection to the proposals and wouldn't allow consent for the works to take place until all those that are party to that restrictive covenant agreed to the proposals. As I say in the report and earlier, this restrictive covenant isn't a material planning consideration which you can take into account. In terms of the other issues, that they principally relate to the additional impacts in terms of highways, noise and disturbance, and capacity of the local highway network for the additional movements. And in terms of those aspects, those have been reviewed. And in terms of amenity, it's not considered that the proposals, albeit increasing the capacity of the nursery school, would cause significant adverse impacts. Given the proximity to the school, the location of the building now, and the use of the existing footpath and car park that is used by the existing primary school, and the similarity in those types of uses, and the hours of operation. And similarly, in terms of highways and access, the Highways Authority have not raised objections to the proposals, and as touched on, the proposal would secure additional car parking within the site. In terms of the principles, the site is located, as mentioned, outside the settlement boundary. The proposals would do accord with the policies in the development plan, which do allow for community facilities, this type of building, in such locations where they meet those tests, which they would, in terms of enhancing the existing facility, being appropriate scale and location to the area, and providing for employment. In terms of other aspects, in terms of the landscape impacts, given where it's located, shown in those photographs, tucked towards the back of the site, behind existing built forms, not considered those impacts would be significant and adverse. And in terms of wildlife and ecology and trees, there are no significant adverse impacts, and all impacts would be mitigated via conditions as set out in the committee report. The application is accordingly recommended for approval subject to those conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back to full screen. Let's see what's happening.
Nigel, could I just ask a question of the officer?
Hang on, I'm trying to get off this screen. Here we go. Right, was that Councillor Duffield?
Yeah.
Can you make it brief? Continue.
Yeah, there was a question on the photo issue of the site houses opposite the site. I don't think that's the correct photo.
Okay, I'm just looking now. So, so that's that photo there, is it?
We're not sharing that.
Okay, bear with me. So can you see that photo there?
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
so those are the residential properties.
that's not dead opposite the site.
Northwood. In terms of, I believe that those are located on the southwest side of the Fakenham Road.
Can I just ask, in Councillor Duffield, the pub is on the on that road, is it not? So
Yeah.
would that be a bit further up or down from that?
That's
photo?
that's closer to the pub.
But that is that same side of the road. I mean, not that it makes a major difference, but yeah, okay, that's fine. Thanks very much. Can we get back to the main screen, please? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, it's open to our speakers. I've got, I hope I'm saying this right. According to mine, we should have Steve Boyce of the Parish Council. I've got you on my screen as Steve Boyce. Okay, thank you. You have representing the Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon. The Parish Council has discussed this application at 2 Parish Council meetings. There's been a full and frank exchange of views from the councillors. These meetings were open to the public, and the comments of residents and the applicant were taken into account when the members decided their response. The Parish Council from the outset has supported the principle of having a viable preschool within the parish. The members support the construction of a new purpose-built mobile replacement building to house the preschool. However, the members have concerns over the expansion of the preschool. The previous comments of the Parish Council have been detailed in the Officer's report for this committee, so I shall not repeat these. However, the issue of the covenant is of considerable concern to the Parish Council. The members realise that this is not a planning consideration, but more explanation needs to be considered. At the outset, the Parish Council advised the preschool to consult with the other properties that also benefit from this restrictive covenant. Of the 8 properties, some would not agree to the siting of a new building on the covenanted land and would therefore seek compensation and costs from the Parish Council if the building proceeds. The Parish Council, after consultation with its solicitor, was advised to request that the preschool enter into a promotion agreement. This agreement would give consent to the school for the Parish Council to apply for planning permission to erect a mobile school. It would also include the following key terms. 1, obligations on the preschool to cover the cost of applying for planning. 2, an indemnity by the preschool to indemnify the Parish Council against any costs incurred in connection with the planning and the build-out. 3, an obligation on the preschool to negotiate with the neighbours on the Parish Council's behalf in connection with the release of the restriction. And 4, an obligation on the preschool to pay any compensation to the neighbours for the release of the restriction and to indemnify the Parish Council against any costs and actions incurred in this regard. The solicitor also recommended that the Parish Council jointly with the preschool instruct the planning expert so that the expert can also advise the Parish Council, being the owners of the land, regarding any additional obligations on the Parish Council. There will be other terms that would need to be negotiated when the agreement is looked at in depth. However, the above is broadly what the agreement would cover. The solicitor also recommended that the preschool be responsible for the Parish Council fees. This was sent to the preschool in March 2020, but there has been no correspondence since then, apart from an acknowledgement. The Parish Council has advised the preschool to consider other sites, for example, the former Norse Depot on Gresson Hall Road. It is disappointing to note that this did not materialise.
Mr. Boyce, thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to the solicitor of the council just for clarification on this issue. Over to you, please, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please make it absolutely clear to members of committee that when the officer says that the matter of the restrictive covenant is not a material planning consideration, that means it is not a material planning consideration. It is not anything that can be taken into account when making this decision, nor are the issues that touch and concern a potential promotion agreement. None of that is in the slightest bit relevant to your determination.
Thanks, Mike. I've got two supporters now. I've got Holly Metcalf and Diane Calvert. So if we take Holly first, you have 1.5 minutes, please. Sorry about that, but we need to share time.
That's fine.
Thank you.
As you say, my name's Holly Metcalf and I'm a mum of a little girl currently at 2 to 3 club and a boy who left to start school last year. The current setup serves a purpose, but there is no option for expansion on the site, so relocation is the only option to grow and improve. The current setup for play and development of a single classroom where children eat, play and learn, and the restricted outside play area. The development will provide a safer environment and relieve pressures from the staff. Currently one-to-ones, private discussions about my child's development has to be in the classroom with other children and staff about. The new setup provides private space for this. The proposed setup will provide extra classrooms for split learning and activities, private spaces for special needs and welfare. For example, my little boy could be quite sensitive, so the current area is well set out, but the extra room and space to get things will assist to in this special time when we're trying to manage their emotions. It will also allow for a well-needed staff area for planning, record keeping and a well-earned cup of tea. My little girl has extra toileting needs and can get quite distressed. At the moment, the toilets are almost part of the classroom, so the option of a calm, quiet area isn't there at this vital stage. The current setup or the new setup will cater for this. Should the preschool close, it's unlikely that I would just be able to seek an alternative as I rely on grandparents in the village to drop off and collect. I visited 2 closest options, but the caring, family-focused and educational foundation that Beatley provide could not be matched. Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak for this in support of this vital community preschool, and I urge you to allow for its development for the future of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Diane, please, you have 1.5 minutes as well, please.
Good afternoon. I'm the manager of the preschool. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of our application. As Holly said, the 2 classrooms would allow us to have separate sessions for all the children at different ages, 5 days a week. The 3rd room would enable us to support children with special educational needs, and staff would be able to have a room to meet with the parents. We are unable to locate the preschool on the grounds of the school, so having the building adjacent to the school is the next best thing. It allows us to give and maintain our close links with the school, helping with transitions and working with them in partnership to support families. Our outside space in the current location is small with no grass. The new location will give the children more access to the natural environment. The proposed location on the field was selected following feedback from local residents on our original ideas. Our current building will not be practical or safe to use in the very near future. If we're unable to provide a suitable setting within the village, local families will have to travel to access early years provision elsewhere. Our preschool helps to build a thriving and sustainable village, and this application is our best hope in ensuring that we continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to Councillor Duffield, please. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I'm there with you now. Yeah, obviously a preschool is desperately needed for this area. The main concerns from the residents are noise, the extra amount of children that are going to go there, and parking. Now, I see by the layout plan designed, unless they're going to enlarge their car park, the new layout will not work because there is not enough space. I can tell you that because I pass it nearly every day. The other problem is with the extra children going there is parking, because like all schools, they all have problem parking. There's a lot of problem. And with the new houses that are proposed within the village and all villages are growing, that number may increase to there. If the planning committee, which I could see a problem of turning it down, they must look upon the neighbours for the point of view of noise control, parking and timing issues, that they do not go outside their times. It's a very difficult decision. Like I said, I've been contacted by several residents to speak against this application. But as I've said, that you do need a new preschool. That's a shame that can't be accommodated in the existing area, and just leave that as a play area for the children in the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's open to questions from members, please. Councillor Attwell, please.
Chairman, somewhat unusually, I find myself, I'm one of the ward members, so I would like to take this opportunity to have my 3 minutes to speak and not as a voting member of the committee. I know that's notifying you extremely late, but am I allowed to do that? Could Mike Horn sort of confirm?
Mike?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, if you're going to grow a village, you really do need to look to grow your services. I understand the parish council's concerns about the legal issues, but I do believe that on a planning merit, this is the right location for a preschool in Beatley. I think it's inevitable that you'll have more children needing to attend because the village is growing. Having been the chairman of a preschool myself some years ago now, I was chairman for several years, not this preschool, but another one. It is important that we do support the children because it gives them a very good grounding before they go to school. It is very important that the preschool is located very close to the school because you have those links. You've got parents that drop off children to preschool, they drop off older children to school, and there's that crossover and that close working relationship between the school and the preschool. I think if planning permission is granted for this, undoubtedly there will then have to be conversations with the parish council and the neighbours. I believe there would need to be some sort of adjudication process on the covenant, but that is for another day. At the moment, we're just looking at the principle of putting this on that site. I believe it's located as far away from houses as it can be. I don't believe, my experience of having run a preschool, there will be an excessive noise issue. Bearing in mind, this is next to a school, so you've got lots of noise from the school anyway. I think this is a vital service. I think it's important for the village. I think the manager of the preschool spoke very well. I can't put it any better than she has really about why this is important. I think we need to move on, approve this application, please, and then we will sit down with the parish council, the preschool and the neighbours and see what we can work out with regard to the covenant. And hopefully we can move forward and do what's best for the children of the village, because that's absolutely vital. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes that was, not to worry. Okay, any other members wishing to ask any questions, please? Councillor Dale, please.
It's not so much to ask a question, but the children at the moment are getting a really bad rap at everything, and any provision that can be done for children entering school, preschool, right through to college, I think we ought to support. Preschool isn't noisy. I'm sure these problems can be overcome, but please think about our young children, and they are the future of the village. They will keep the school operation and they will move on. So please let's consider how we can move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions from members? No.
No hands up, Chairman.
No. Can I just have a show of hands for those of you who have heard all of the presentation and you're satisfied to go to the vote? Yes, I think that's everyone. Okay. Right, thank you. So your officer's recommendation on this item for Beatley 3PL 2020-0750 is one of approval. So Julie, can you take the roll, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson?
4.
Councillor Atterwill?
Oh, you, Mike?
Oh, sorry. Councillor Bowes? My apologies, my apologies. Councillor Bowes? Councillor Brame?
4.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
4.
Councillor Dale?
4.
Councillor Digan?
4.
Councillor Gilbert?
4.
Councillor Martin?
4.
And Councillor Kybird.
4.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry about that. That is unanimous.
That's okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, thanks. So this item is approved. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. We're running rather late now, so we're going to go to Carston if we can get the we've got Councillor Cohen and Councillor Suggett to join us.
Actually, Chairman, it's not Councillor Cowan today.
You look just like him. You could almost be his twin.
Well, yes, my alter ego is present for you today. It's Mr. Cowan, actually. I do apologise for my name.
Okay. Well, you two need to get your act together because I've got Sarah Suggett, not Councillor Sarah Suggett, and I've got Councillor Phil Cohen, not Phil Cohen. So I am trying my hardest, but I will pretend that I know what I'm doing. Okay, so with item 3PL 2020-1000, Caston the Barnes, Attleborough Road, and we hand over to Naomi, please, for the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall just load it up. Just bear with me, sorry. Right, okay, can you all see that? So the application proposes, this is for a single-storey conversion of a single-storey storage unit, which has been used as an annex in the past into one residential dwelling. The proposed residential dwelling would comprise 2 bedrooms. It is on Attleborough Road in Caston. So this is the site and wider context. And the site in relation to the settlement boundary, which is to the southwest. And this is the location plan there in red with the blue outlining what the applicant owns. And the existing floor plan of the building. And this slide shows the proposed floor plans and elevations. You can also see on the site plan that the front garden already benefits from planning permission for 2 dwellings on site. And these are the site photos. That's the existing dwelling to the rear there, and the building to be converted. And this shows the garden area, which has planning permission for 2 dwellings. And this is the main road. Again, where the access is proposed, and back to the site layout plan. So we've had no objections from the statutory consultees having regard to highway safety and ecology considerations. We've had no comments received from any members of the public in respect of the proposal. In terms of the principle of development, it is accepted that the building appears to be in sound structural condition and capable of conversion in line with the requirements of policy how to, which is concerned with the conversion of buildings within the countryside. In terms of the character and appearance, it's accepted that the building is already in existence and the conversion works proposed would involve the overall function and appearance of it, would improve the overall function and appearance of it for the purpose of creating a separate dwelling. In terms of the impact on amenity considerations, it's acknowledged, given the size of the building and available space surrounding it, that the proposal is for a smaller, modest 2-bedroom dwelling with an open space living. However, having assessed the submitted material, it is considered that whilst the proposal would ensure the protection of adequate areas of usable and secluded private amenity space for the occupiers of the existing dwellings, given the restricted dimensions of the plot, the proposal would fail to provide adequate areas of usable and secluded private amenity space for the occupiers of the proposed dwelling, in keeping with the character and the appearance of the surrounding areas. Having regard to existing fenestration on the southeast elevation of the host dwelling and the proximity of it to the application site, as well as taking account of the submitted floor plans for the proposed dwelling, it is considered that the proposal would likely have an adverse impact in terms of loss of privacy and overlooking for occupants of the proposed dwelling. Whilst it is appreciated that there would be an element of buyer beware, this in itself is not justification to allow unacceptable forms of development in the first instance. The proposal is therefore considered to be contrary to the aims and objectives of policy COM3 of the Breckland local plan, whilst also having regard to paragraph 127 of the NPPF. For those reasons, it's recommended for refusal. And that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you. We can get back to full screen, please. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Cowan, who's the agent, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Would you be kind enough to put back up that site plan, please?
Yes, just bear with me one moment. Okay.
That's the one. Thank you very much indeed. So members, you'll be aware from the papers before you that the conclusion states this is contrary to COM 03, which is residential amenity, but that isn't given as the reason for refusal. The reason for refusal is COM 01. Now, what I would like to draw your attention to is not just the obvious. This is a building which exists. It is reusing an existing structure which is no longer used for the purpose for which it was originally intended. The buildings adjacent to it, this one here is single story, and all the windows and doors are at low level. This one here, which is the gable you could see, is very difficult on that photograph. There are a couple of small bedroom windows on the southeast gable. This particular building that we're talking about, this one here, actually contains something like 240 square meters, excluding car parking space, of external amenity space. It has there or thereabouts 100 square meters of usable space. It is deliberately designed to accommodate either a single person or an elderly or young couple wishing to remain in the local community. And if you are an elderly couple wanting to downsize, the last thing you probably need is a large garden. And this particular property has a garden which has the potential for hard and soft landscaping. Pardon me. So I would contend that it is appropriate for scale and contradicts the conclusion reached that it contravenes COM 03. And I do struggle to appreciate why the loss of privacy, as stated in COM 01, is particularly relevant. It's a building that the applicant wishes to see reused for the purposes that it has been designed. There is a desire for smaller properties in our rural communities. There is a dearth of them. This gives it just that. And it tends to balance on this particular site some of the larger properties with the opportunity for smaller ones. And as a consequence, it provides for a more balanced sort of community spirit, whereby some of these existing buildings are much larger. Some, frankly, are of a similar size, and contain less amenity space than this particular proposal provides for. On that basis, I would contend that it is not in contravention of Breckland's policies, but is entirely consistent with them. Chairman, on that point, I will cease and hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Suggett, please, who's the ward rep. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. As a ward member and nearby resident of this application site, I can personally vouch for how uncommon it is to have the privilege to see a bungalow being proposed in this area. We have a desperate need for single-storey living accommodation. Indeed, estate agents are themselves struggling to assist older generations who wish to downsize whilst remaining in the village location. This is evidenced by an estate agent who has recently valued the land and buildings before conversion at a price of £125,000. This is compared to £175,000 for the other two much larger plots on the site that have recently been given permission by this committee. Turning to the officer's report and the reason for refusal, namely insufficient private amenity space, I would like to draw the committee's attention to a couple of points. The planning inspector has recently allowed the appeal of a much smaller property in Great Ellingham, a neighbouring village, which only offers 113 square metres of living space and neighbours who are much closer. And permission was also given in Great Ellingham to construct a bungalow of only 58 square metres of living space and next to no outdoor space. This application is for a property of 120 square metres of living space in a plot which can also offer ample hard-standing and garden space. Referring to paragraph 127 of the NPPF, I believe that this proposal is not only in keeping with its surrounding area, but it will in fact enhance it further by enabling a storage building to be sensitively and conscientiously converted. This conversion has been considerately thought out with good proportions given to allow for manageable, comfortable living space. It has considered reclamation where possible and sustainable material use and heating system. I believe that this application conforms to both Con 1 of the local plan and paragraph 127 of the NPPF. I feel the balance for much needed single-storey development, which enhances its surroundings, outweighs the concern of size and amenity space, which I believe this application has addressed. I therefore wholeheartedly support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Rebecca, did you want to come back on an issue there?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that thank you, Mr. Cowan, in this instance. Yeah, that is obviously a typing error. That should read policy COM03, which is obviously your amenity, policy, members. That's a typing error on our account that I can apologise for. Apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. Members needing to raise any questions. Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start off by saying that not everybody wants a big garden. So a lot of people downsize because they want to get rid of the garden area they do have. So I'm struggling to find that as a reason for refusal. But can you clear something up for me, please? As to what exactly the past use of this building has been, because at one point we're being told it's a storage shed, and then we're being told that it was before that actually a habitable building. So I understand, am I right that it was used as a dwelling house and it was after that used for storage? Can you clear that up for me, please?
As far as I'm aware from the application details, it has not been used as a separate dwelling in its own right. It was used as an annex in the past for the applicant's parents, who have since unfortunately passed away. And I'm aware that it had planning permission to be used as a shop in support of the farm in the past as well. But as at present, we're told it's used for storage purposes.
Can I come back there? So you are saying that in the past it was used as a dwelling house?
It was used as an annex
Yeah,
in
but
support
people
of
lived in
a
it.
dwelling.
I say what I'm trying to get at is the suitability of the building. So in the
Well, it
past,
was used in
people lived there,
association
whether
with
it's
an
an annex or
existing
whatever.
residential. It was used in association with an existing residential dwelling, so that anyone in that annex would have had access to the residential dwelling as well.
Yeah, but it was habitable.
Yes, so
Yeah,
it was
but
used as
I
an
don't
annex, but not in its
Yeah.
own right, which is
Yeah.
what I was understanding from your comments.
Yeah.
The
Thank you.
reason of it being habitable is not in question.
Yeah.
Any more questions from members at all? No? Oh,
Wilkinson.
you're saying, as soon as I say no, someone puts a hand up. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Yeah, thank you. Naomi, can you confirm it's going to be built on the same footing as original footings? And
I don't think this is a rebuild. This is a conversion of the existing building.
so it'd be on the same footage, floor space footage as it's got now.
It's the same item, they're just converting it.
And there is permissions for properties to be built in the garden there. And obviously when something like that happens, density and is taken into consideration. Is this going to increase the density of the site if you'd have planned it as a whole, if you know what I mean? Would that
Well,
increase, would it affect the
increase in
density?
another dwelling will obviously increase the density.
And would that go over any regulation density of dwellings being close together?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No more questions from members. Can I just have a show of hands that you've all listened to and heard the application completely? Thank you. Okay, over to you then, Julie, for this one, because on Caston, which is 3PL 2020-1000, your officer's recommendation on this one is for refusal. So can I have the roll call for refusal, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson,
For.
Councillor Atterwill,
For.
Councillor Bowes,
For.
Councillor Brain,
Against.
Councillor Chapman Allen,
For.
Councillor Clark,
For.
Councillor Dale,
For.
Councillor Digan,
Oh, sorry, for.
Councillor Gilbert,
Against.
Councillor Martin,
For.
and Councillor Kybird.
Against.
Thank you, Chair. That's 3 votes against refusal and 8 votes for the refusal.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Then this item is refused. Thank you very much, Mr. Cowan and Councillor Stuggett, for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're running rather late. Garboldish, we're going to go to now. If we can have, we've got 2 speakers, Doug Bedford and Ian Pick.
Refusal and
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Right. Okay. So that's it, members. We're going 3PL 2020-0647, Garboldish. That's over to you, please, Fiona.
Good afternoon. This is a full planning application for the erection of 4 poultry sheds, together with associated infrastructure, including feed silos and drainage systems, at land south of the A10066 at Diss Road. So this is the application site. You can see it's to the east of a public right-of-way, and to the northeast is Garboldish, and to the northwest is Smallworth villages. Here's the location plan connecting up to this road. And here we have the proposed site plan with the 4 poultry sheds in the middle. You can see an attenuation lagoon in the southwest corner. The green hashed area at the northern end of the site is existing tree belt, and to the south is proposed tree belt, which is 20 metres in width. Here are the proposed elevations. So the poultry houses are 98 metres in length, 24.2 metres in width, 2.5 metres to eave, 5.1 metres to ridge, 5.8 metres to chimney, and they are 9.1 metres to the top of the silos. So they're quite large buildings. And in total, the poultry houses have 8,844 square metres of internal space. This is the site from Diss Road, and you can see the trees there. The building will be behind those. This is from the public right of way. I've hashed in red the approximate location of the site. And again, the building will be behind some of the trees in that photograph. Here is the site from the south and looking north towards the site from Clay Lane. Again, it will be behind those trees. And the same trees, but in winter. And this is the site from the southwest corner. It's currently arable agricultural land extending to 6 hectares, including the access road. So this application we have consulted, and we haven't had any objections from the statutory consultees or internal council officers. Due to the number of birds that will be accommodated by the development, which is 182,750 broilers, it is has to be considered under the environmental impact assessment regulations, and duly the applicant has submitted an environmental statement. We have thus undertaken our assessment and concluded no significant effect to the environment is likely. The site is also close to a special area of conservation and so we've had to undertake a habitats regulation assessment, including an appropriate assessment. Having undertaken this, we've concluded the development is likely significant effect can be excluded. And in coming to this conclusion, we've taken regard to advice from Natural England. We've had quite a number of local representations raising objections to this application. One of the main issues is concern about off-site flooding and whether this development will increase that. The application, being a major, has been supported by a detailed surface water strategy and a flood risk assessment, which the LFA, the Lead Local Flood Authority, has considered and found to be acceptable. They're proposing to direct surface water to a new attenuation lagoon, which will then release water into the ditch network at a controlled greenfield rate. This has been designed for the 1 in 100 year rainfall event, and there's been a 40% allowance for climate change. Whilst there is concern that developing the site will increase flooding, the evidence we've been provided with suggests that there will be no increase, and in storm events there'll actually be a slight improvement. And this is because they're containing water in the attenuation lagoon and holding it there for a period of time before slowly releasing it. And that means that water that would have previously sheeted over the field and into the ditch, some of that's going to be held in the attenuation lagoon. In relation to the principle of development, it accords with our policy EC04. The site is grade 2 agricultural land, and some of it will be lost by this development. However, the economic benefits of the proposal and food supply benefits, together with there's the 20-metre tree planting buffer at the southern boundary they're proposing, which will have biodiversity and flood prevention benefits, is sufficient to outweigh that loss of grade 2 land, grade 2 agricultural land. Residential amenities being a big consideration for this application. The application has been supported by an odour report and a noise report, both of which have found harm to residential neighbours is below acceptable levels and resulted in no objections from our environmental health officer or the Environment Agency. There is a negative of the proposal that we need to consider in the planning balance, and that is that there will be a moderate negative effect from views from the public right of way to the west of the application site, together with from Smallworth and Broadway Lane. However, we have concluded that the 20-metre width tree planting they are proposing at the southern boundary, which, as I said before, has that biodiversity and flood prevention benefits, and provides some additional screening, together with our recommended condition for 6 trees along the eastern boundary, and the conditions for external materials control and controlling finished land levels is sufficient to make it acceptable on balance. Last week we were notified and confirmed by the agent that manure has been stored at the concrete pad at the northwestern part of the site, and that could increase odour levels. So we are recommending one additional condition, which is that manure has to be removed prior to first use of development, and that area not to be used for manure storage in perpetuity thereafterwards. Subject to the various conditions, we are recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just go back to full screen, please. Okay, thank you. Trying to see on my screen. I've lost you. Oh, Mr. Bedford, I found you. Mr. Bedford, who's an objector, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I speak on behalf of the hundreds of local residents against this application. This committee should follow the recent leads of councils in Huntingdon, Kent, Lincolnshire, Norfolk, and many others who have recently refused similar applications on grounds of adverse environmental impact and odour. In December 2020, the North Norfolk Council shut down a similar installation at Fulmerston due to unbearable odours. This proposal is an industrial, not agricultural purpose, its size and nature out of keeping and intrusive to the local surroundings, seriously impacting on the character of the landscape. The EIA in this application is flawed by biased and incorrect data and assumptions. The 4 viewpoints selected ignore views from residential properties, which would have raised the impact from moderate to high. The planting mitigation is completely insufficient to fulfill obligations to shield the site from view. The odour assessment only factors a 70% northeasterly vector. Life will be unbearable to residents on this track, including children, elderly, and those currently shielding. It completely ignores the remaining 30% easterly winds, which will travel the odour downhill into the village of Garboldisham with its housing, families, and primary school. It fails to calculate the cumulative effect. Tons of manure, as you've seen, is stored adjacent to the site, and photos have been supplied on that. The applicant has failed to sufficiently address this major issue. This is another Fulmerston in the making, and the committee should refuse the application on this point alone. Residents of Smallworth are seeing increasing levels of flooding. Recently, Mr. Williams' house was flooded. Other properties are at risk. This site will increase the flow of drained water towards Smallworth. The assessments undertaken fail to consider recent changes in the water table and climate change. If this application is passed, more properties will be flooded. Highways approval is assessed as borderline and dependent on a new speed limit on the main arterial road. Since this report, a serious injury accident on the 7th of January this year closed the road for 5 hours on this very stretch. The applicant's widening of the access track will have no impact. Over 1,300 HGVs per year pulling out onto the 1066 will increase the accident rate. Highways borderline has now been crossed, and the application should be refused on this point alone. The application demonstrates no local economic employment benefits, is massively carbon negative with 0 green credentials. 30% of the UK diet is vegetarian and increasing. 70% of chicken carcasses are exported. This is a short-term, high-profit business plan, leaving the environment and residents scarred for life. In summary, the applicant has failed to sufficiently address issues relating to the environment, view, odour, flooding and highway safety. This application has a substantial negative impact on the well-being of local residents with no benefits. You have been given countless reasons by the local community why you should not approve this development, and we urge you to refuse this application based on these legitimate planning reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I did allow you to go slightly over, but there. Mr. Pick, please, you have 3 minutes, sir. You're still on mute. You're on now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, away you go.
Chair, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. This application seeks consent for a new poultry farm for broiler chicken production, which extends to 4 poultry sheds and associated infrastructure. Significant levels of pre-application advice were sought from Breckland Planning, Natural England and the Environment Agency prior to submitting this planning application, looking into issues of highways, landscape, residential amenity, ammonia deposition to protected ecological sites. In planning policy terms, this site is an exceptional location for the development of a new poultry farm, and this is borne out by the fact that there are no objections to the scheme from any statutory consultee. Furthermore, the Environment Agency have already granted the environmental permit for this development. The environmental permit controls the operation of the site and environmental emissions, for example, odour, ammonia and noise impacts. The application is accompanied by environmental reports on odour, noise, ammonia, landscape and visual impacts and flood risk and drainage. These reports are prepared in accordance with the relevant British standards or methodology and confirm that the impacts of the development are compliant with regulatory standards. It is acknowledged that there are quite a number of objections to the proposal from local residents, raising concerns on amenity, flooding and highways issues. It must be stressed that the issues raised by local residents have been fully considered in the siting and design of the scheme, and we are confident that the proposals can operate without any adverse effect on the amenity of neighbours. This is supported by the fact that the Environment Agency have granted the permit to operate the site. Paragraph 183 of the National Planning Policy Framework is very relevant in this case, as it directs local planning authorities to focus on planning decisions, that the focus of planning decisions should be on whether the proposed development is an acceptable use of land rather than the control of processes or emissions, where these are controlled by separate pollution control regimes. Planning decisions should assume that these regimes will operate effectively. The proposal is for an agricultural development in a countryside location and as such is an acceptable use of land. The application has a clear recommendation of approval and it's respectfully requested that permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pick. Okay, it's open to questions from members, please. No one wishing to ask any questions? Okay, that's fine. Can I just, Councillor Chapman-Allen.
Chairman, yes, thank you. I don't actually have a question as such, Chairman, but I was asked, as this is my ward, by residents that live nearby to the application site to emphasise their concerns, which I'm sure all councillors have seen on the report regarding their concerns about odours, Chairman. I said I would raise it. The site is being used quite often for the retention of chicken manure from the applicant's other chicken sheds. And to the best of my knowledge, Chairman, I nor the parish council have ever received any complaints about odour from the site being used for chicken litter. So I'm sorry I didn't have a question, Chairman, but I did say to residents that I would raise their concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions. Okay, so can I have a show of hands that you've all heard adequately the presentation? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on this item for Garbolisham, 3PL 2020-0647, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. So, Julie, can you take the roll, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Just to make sure that recommendation includes the additional condition about removing the manure, or to clarify whether or not it's thank you.
Yeah, I was going to cover that at the end. Thank you very much, Fiona. But yes, it's to recover the to remove the manure heap that was shown on those photos. Sorry, Julie, can you start that again, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson.
4,
Councillor Atterwill,
4,
Councillor Bowes,
4,
Councillor Brame,
4,
Councillor Marion Chapman-Allen,
4,
Councillor Clark,
4,
Councillor Dale,
4,
Councillor Dygan,
4,
Councillor Gilbert,
Against.
Councillor Martin,
4,
and Councillor Kybird.
4.
Thank you, Chairman. That's carried.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this item's approved. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers. Okay, we're now going to take a short break for 5 minutes, please. Just 5 minutes. And if you're going, I suggest you just put your video onto
Five minutes, having a quick comfort break. I'll have a quick bath. Two more applications.
you need anything? Do you need anything?
I think everyone's here, Teresa. I'm trying to look through. Oh. Oh no, we've got some people missing. They're coming in slowly. I thought Peter was here. Oh, you are there. There you are. Sorry, Peter. Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we are all here. Good to go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, thanks. So we're going to Gately now, and we should have John Gray, the applicant, coming to join us. Ah, you're on my screen now, sir. Thank you. Okay, so members, it's for Gately. It's 3PL 2018-1020, and Rebecca Collins presenting this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We're in Gately, Primrose Cottage and Gately Common. The application reference is 3PL 2018-1020, and we're dealing with a full application for a replacement dwelling and a new stabling building encompassing a carport garage. Here is the site with the wider context outlined in red in front of you. You can see the application site it outlined in red for you, and then here we can see the wider ownership plan outlined in blue for you, which is of relevance as we discuss the application. Just to highlight to you, just to the south of the application site, in the middle of the red line, right on the edge of the red line, is the existing residential property. This is for a replacement dwelling. It was referred to committee from Chairman's panel on the grounds that the application is technically contrary to policy HOW 11 of your local plan. However, as officers, we consider there are other material considerations relevant to this application, and that's why we've recommended it for approval. So you'll note, members, that the application dates from 2018. We have had the application considerable amount of time where significant discussions have been undergone with the applicants, whereby they've submitted additional information and they've amended their proposals, which is really relevant to the application. So policy HOW 11 is your replacement dwellings policy. Policy HOW 11 does allow for replacement dwellings in the open countryside, which this is, where the scale and design is sensitive to their setting, where the height and size is similar to the existing. And in this instance, the new proposed dwelling is significantly larger than the existing dwelling. And that's why officers are saying it's contrary to policy HOW 11. There is a little caveat in policy HOW 11, which says if it is a significantly different height and scale to the existing, then it must be of exceptional design. And obviously, members, I'll show you the elevation plans proposed a bit later on. So here in front of you is the site plan. Like I say, the applicants have worked with officers amending the design and the layout of the application site to improve the application. So they have indeed reduced the scale of the dwelling that you see in front of it, sitting alone in front of you. You'll note to the left or to the west of the application site of the dwelling that is proposed, there is a stable book, and attached to that is the existing dwelling. In an earlier iteration of the plans, they were two separate buildings of larger size. What the applicant's done is reduced the garage inside and placed it as part of the stabling building. You'll note from the officer report that we think the equestrian use of the land is acceptable in principle. and also that the stable building shown here wouldn't count towards the increase in the significant size and scale of the dwelling to what exists on site. So we looked at this on the basis of the residential dwelling and the garage, but that still is an increase in height and size of the existing dwelling on the site. Also, you'll note from this plan the significant setback from the red line, which you can faintly see where the access point and gates are shown, to that of the existing dwelling, and this area is to be landscaped as part of the proposals with this application. So here is the existing floor plan of the existing dwelling. So very much quite a fairly small unit, and we've got some photos of the existing dwelling in front of you. Not in front of you, apologies, to follow. Here is the proposed new garage and stable, so combined building, reducing the overall footprint of the dwelling. And like I say, we've not counted the stabling in the increasing size in our assessment, because we consider the use of the equestrian land as surrounding and the use of this stabling to be in principle acceptable in its own right. Here is the proposed front elevation and floor plan of the dwelling proposed. Like I say, officers have spent some time with the applicants and reducing the height and scale and changing the design so that it fits in with the surrounding area and has a simple cottage appearance to it, traditional frontage that one would expect to see in the surrounding area. And obviously of note is the setback within the application site and the landscaping that was proposed to go with it. However, officers do not consider this to be of exceptional design to sit with the caveat of policy HOW 11, and therefore, like I say, we consider this to be contrary to HOW 11 of the local plan. I'll just show you the side and rear elevations. For the purposes of your other material considerations, I'm just going to flip back for you members, so just bear with me. So as you can see, it is an exceptionally large plot on the surrounding area that the applicants intends to use as equestrian and have the stables on site to support that use. They have submitted that as part of their justification for the additional increase in size and dwelling, that it's an exceptionally sized plot and that the dwelling itself will be comparable to the size of the plot. Like I say, the design has been amended to better suit the street scene. And it is proportionate, it is considered by officers, the design is acceptable and it is proportioned to the plot. We note that the equestrian use, and we've taken this into consideration with the replacement dwelling. And on the grounds of the size of the plot, that the applicants have in fact reduced the design and changed the design to meet the character of the area. And they were removing, and I will show you some images in a second, an existing dilapidated building, which will actually improve the character of the area, along with the proposed landscaping, and support an alternative use in this location in terms of the equestrian. We think as officers there are other material considerations here, especially given how small the existing dwelling is, and therefore we do consider that this is acceptable in principle for those reasons. Just to show you the photos, councillors. So here is the existing dwelling on site. It's very attractive former chapel. When the application was first submitted, some concerns were raised, as this was obviously demolition of what we consider to be a non-designated heritage asset. That's policy ENV 03 of your local plan, which seeks to protect non-designated heritage assets. The applicant submitted at the time a heritage statement and a structural survey to demonstrate that the building was not structurally sound, and that they've recorded it in terms of heritage terms. We've consulted our historic buildings officer and the historic environment service at the county council in that regard, and they have agreed that the building can be demolished on these grounds of that set out in the heritage statement and the structural soundness of the building. On those grounds, we are accepting that the building is acceptable to replace in terms of its impact on a non-designated heritage asset in section 16 of the NPPF. So here is obviously the access to the site onto the common and the surrounding area photos, and a side view of the existing building showing the state that the building is currently in. And we have some photos of the surrounding land around the dwelling and how much, how dilapidated and how much run down and what the surrounding site is like, and that we think a new dwelling in this location will contribute to the clearing up of this area and the appearance from the street scene, along with the landscaping that's proposed. Again, the dwelling in itself and the surrounding area. There are no objections from the parish council on this ground. In fact, there's no statutory objections to the application. Like I say, the Historic Environment Service is satisfied that the application can be removed, but obviously want to point out to us our own policy, which I've already covered, which says the size and scale of new dwellings shouldn't be significantly increased, and I've covered that in my presentation. There are 2 letters of representation that are set out in the officer report. We do not consider that the proposals relate into an impact on amenity or highways, and highways do not object in these grounds. Neither do ecology, subject to the submission of additional ecology information to demonstrate that the application to remove the existing building wouldn't harm and wouldn't in fact enhance local ecology. With regards to the actual application site itself, the whole of the red line is set within a surface water flood risk area. As set out in the officer report, the NPPF section 14 seeks to direct development away from areas at risk of flooding. However, the applicants have submitted a surface water flood risk assessment, and within that surface water flood risk assessment, they've demonstrated that they can achieve greenfield runoff rates within the site through mitigation measures in terms of storage crates and slow release into the local drainage network, and the increase in floor levels of the existing dwelling to protect future occupants. We've discussed these proposals with the lead local flood authority, and they agree that these measures would prevent further flood risk elsewhere. And on that basis, subject to the conditions outlined in your report in terms of a flood evacuation plan and drainage measures to suit the measures set out in the flood risk assessment, then we have recommended this one for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gray, you have 3 minutes to do your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make this brief statement in support of our planning application. This statement sets out what we wish the planning committee to be made aware of when considering our application. The application proposal is to provide a well-designed dwelling with a traditional appearance that meets a high specification for energy efficiency. We believe it is proportionate to its location as part of a 5-acre plot. The proposed dwelling replaces an existing property situated in the middle one of 3 enclosures. It represents enhancement to the character and appearance of the area and is supported by the local community, with many positive comments having been made to us by our neighbours in support of the published plans. The architectural design of the proposed dwelling was amended during the life of the application in line with the requirements of the Council's Historic Buildings Officer. This resulted in a reduction in the size and scale of the proposed dwelling, whilst meeting the requirements of the Council and being sensitive to comments from neighbours on the common. Through the submission of a historic building assessment, we have been able to demonstrate that the original Primrose Cottage was not a former primitive Methodist chapel, as was at first thought by the Council's consultee. The application site was previously littered with scrap, numerous old vehicles and general rubbish, and was very overgrown. Primrose Cottage had stood empty since 2015, and since that time the condition of the fields had deteriorated. Despite the untidy nature of the site, we were able to see the potential for returning it to its grazing pasture with a stable barn for private equestrian use and a garage and carport to replace the existing dilapidated outbuildings. We felt we could develop a dwelling with amenities that perfectly suited our needs whilst being sympathetic to the surrounding environment. Clearance has been undertaken with the removal of scrub and brambles and the former original ditches and hawthorn hedgerows that line the boundaries of the fields have been discovered and improved, thereby preserving the natural drainage of the site and offering positive site enhancement. It is intended that significant further planting is undertaken which will support wildlife, flora and fauna. This has been a particularly lengthy application process, and we hope that the committee will be able to support their officer recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. 3 minutes and 2 seconds. I don't know if I'll ever get those 2 seconds back, but we'll try. Okay, it's open to questions from members, please. Councillor Bowes, please.
Thank you. Yes, what is the actual age of Primrose Cottage, please?
Mr. Gray, you'd be the one.
So, sorry again, I didn't quite hear the question.
Councillor Bowes wanted to know the age of Primrose Cottage, which is the building set for demolition.
Oh, okay.
Within the application.
The actual building itself is a bit of a hybrid of mixed development, which our historical consultant said goes back to possibly the 16th century in terms of the materials used, but he didn't believe that anything that is there at the moment is actually 16th century. So what is there at the moment is basically the result of constructions since the mid 19th century.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions from members at all? No, good. Okay, so with regards to this item at Gately, 3PL 2018-1020. Can I have a show of hands that you've all heard and have followed the presentation? Yes, you're all in there. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll hand over to Julie to take the roll call, and the recommendation from your officers on this one is one of approval.
Thank you,
Julie.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Atterwill.
For.
Councillor Bowes.
Against.
Councillor Brame.
For.
Councillor Chapman Allen.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Dale.
For.
Councillor Daigan.
For.
Excuse me. Councillor Gilbert.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
And Councillor Kybird.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Gray. Okay, we're going to move swiftly on and go to our last one on. Oh,
Rebecca
sorry.
wants to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman,
Rebecca.
just for the purposes of the recording, I don't think that was unanimous because Claire voted against it.
I thought I heard that against. It was a little bit blippy.
My apologies, Chairman. I was choking. I just wanted to get.
I had it down with a cross, but I thought I got it wrong. But no, okay. Yes. Councillor Bowes was one against it.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, can we move on to Mattershall, please? We've got quite a few speakers to join us on this one.
Total strange.
Oh, something's happened. We've gone. I just want, before we go on, can we just go back to full screen? Just want to make sure we've got all our speakers in with us, please. Can we go back? Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman.
I got muted.
Yeah,
Can I just check? Sorry, can I just check? I just want to check because I've got a few. David Fowler. Yes, I can see David Fowler. Nikki Grandy. Oh yeah, Nicola. Sorry. Anna Luke.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I can see you. Yes. Chris Smith. Yeah, I can see Chris Smith. Councillor Martin. Yes, we've got them. And Councillor Clausen. Yeah, that's fine. But they're all present. So we'll continue with the presentation. Over to you, please, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Just putting up the presentation now. So this is item 10G in the committee report pack. It's the site land south of Dereham Road in Mattershall. So pages 121 to 141 of the committee report pack, plus the revisions within the supplementary report. In terms of the application, we have received additional representations this morning. So I'm aware, I understand members would have received one from George Freeman MP. We've also got another one from a neighbouring landowner. I'll go through those shortly. Returning to the slides, so the proposals are a full application for 50 dwellings with associated infrastructure. In terms of the site application, we have the site edge red there, the additional land owned by the applicants edge blue, with an option on the land D. In terms of the location more generally, here we can see the village of Mattershall, the settlement boundary, and the site is in this northwest corner of the village, south of Dereham Road, running east-west. Old Hall Road, which I mentioned in due course, running to the west. There we can see some of the context from an aerial view. So residential properties to the north, farm, former farmhouse, and converted barn to the east, open fields to the south and west of the site. And there you can see some of the facilities within the village and their location in relation to the site. In terms of the site, here we are on the approach into Mattershall from the west. That's the site on the right hand side. So flat open site from this point. And that's from the junction with Howes Lane across the site. And that's the view going back out of the village. So the application site is beyond those single-storey properties and the trees there. And that's the site frontage with that red dot, and then behind those trees and hedgerow. And there's the site frontage there with footpath opposite. And that's the view from the west. So along Old Hall Road, the approximate location of the site with those edge red. That's to give you an idea of the existing properties on the Dereham Road. So there's a mixture of ages and styles and heights. So single story, 2-story properties. Turning to the proposals, I'll touch on the application site. You can see the red edge there. The proposals shown there. So a single central access point, dwellings fronting Dereham Road, and then access continues into the development with a block form of layout, a mixture of single 2-story dwellings. We'll touch on the house types in a moment. We've got children's play area located in the south-east corner of the site, with areas of open space on the southern boundary adjacent to the field. So we've got allotments here and also an orchard in that location there. That's an idea of the landscaping proposals being proposed. As mentioned, it is a full application, so we do have a number of the detail on that. So gives you an idea of the landscaping proposed. In terms of the dwellings themselves, the street scene along Dereham Road is shown across that full extent on the top image, and then broken down on those bottom images of each half. So 2-story properties. They take a traditional approach. I'll just run through some of the house types. So we've got 2-bedroom semis here. So the mixture of materials, including predominantly brick and with traditional detailing. We've got chimneys, headers and sills and opening surrounds. I'll just go through these quickly for you. That's a 2-bedroom semi-detached. We've got an example of a 3-bedroom semi-detached property, again taking the same aesthetic. An example of the 4-bedroom detached dwellings, floor plans, and again another example of the larger plots. And also there's a small number 3 single-story dwellings there. So there's an idea of those. And in terms of how the proposals relate to some of the history, it does have a long history. And this was the framework master plan submitted within the outline application, which was allowed at appeal. So we've got, again, the central access point, and the proposals align with this, and the key aspects in terms of open space, play areas, attenuation basins and road layouts all kind of flow on from that. So that's an indicative layout, taking you back to what's proposed within this application. So as mentioned, we've got a layout which provides, in terms of a coherent, legible layout, touched on the aspects within it. We've got the surface water attenuation basin on the western boundary, then a mixture of planting, tree planting, hedgerows across the site, particularly the orchard planting here and future allotments. Now, I touched on some additional representations we have received, and here's one from adjacent landowner at Old Hall Farm. So these just include some photographs of historic incidents and more recent incidents of flooding in Mattershall and in the immediate area surrounding the site on the highways and the site itself. I'll just touch through those for your information. So incidents in 1993, more recently 2013. So that's indications of flood drainage routes, site being here, and these are more recently taken this month on the 22nd of January. So that's a view towards the application site over here. And this is Old Hall Road, Dereham Road running along there on that hedgerow. That's the same view. So in terms of other representations, we have received a letter from George Freeman MP. So that raises a number of other matters. I understand all members have received that. It touches on the principle of development and its conflict with the local and national planning policies. It also highlights the ongoing flooding incidents within the immediate surrounding area. Just seeing some photos there. Impacts on the character and heritage of the area, whether there's sufficient infrastructure provided for, and the strong level of local opposition to the proposals. Go through the presentation. I'll touch on those aspects in more detail shortly. As mentioned, as members may well be aware, it is a controversial site locally. We've had continue to have a number of objections, so 86 objections to the application, with a small number, 2 representations in support, and those are all detailed in the committee report pack you have. So in terms of some of the key issues, as highlighted by residents and George Freeman, the principal development, this application has to be judged on its merits, obviously in accordance with planning legislation, paragraph 2 of the NPPF. So it requires all applications to be determined in accordance with planning policies, as you know, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And as set out in the committee report, officers' views that the proposals do accord with the policies in the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. The particular importance is whilst the previous application was refused, there was obviously an application allowed at appeal, an outline scheme, and since that point, since that time, the local plan has been adopted. So this site is now within the settlement boundary. In terms of how that relates to the principle, obviously the policies in the local plan do seek to direct development into the settlement boundary and to sustainable locations such as this, a local service centre with associated facilities. In terms of concerns raised around the 5-year supply and how that relates to the appeal decision, I mean, the council can now demonstrate a 5-year supply. However, the site still remains in the settlement boundary, and the 50 dwellings being proposed, are part of that supply and contribute to providing additional housing in the district. So in this regard, it's not, in fact, a consideration of whether we have a supply. If it is refused, then that would work to undermine the supply we have now. As previously set out, that the principles, it is within the settlement boundary, within the local plan. And in terms of the images you've got in front of you, we are aware of obviously incidents, and these run back through the last 30 years, as highlighted by that representation there. Now, in terms of we're aware of the clear concerns there. Now we've subsequently gone back to the lead local flood authority, and they've confirmed that their comments, they have raised no objections, and they're fully aware of the historic incidents and that the surrounding highway network and land does continue to flood, and that was partly the reasons for the first application on the site being refused and dismissed at appeal. Now, since that, the applicants subsequently undertook additional modelling of surface water and took the proposed dwellings outside of areas of flood risk and have proposed a series of mitigation measures. And as a result, the proposals are compliant with national and local planning policy. We've got a attenuation basin here and a network of swales and drainage pipes, which would work to control and restrict flow into the existing ditch network. Now, as a result, the proposals wouldn't increase the risk of flood risk elsewhere. As a result, would accord with planning policy, as I said, at local and national and neighbourhood level. In terms of other drainage matters, the Environment Agency haven't raised objections. And in terms of some issues about infrastructure, as detailed in the committee report, the proposals would seek to provide infrastructure in terms of highways improvements, footpath connections to the west, and also financial contributions to health facilities in the village, which would at present be directed towards a new build facility in the village, and also financial contribution to library facilities. I've touched on in terms of open space infrastructure. The proposals are in excess of the requirements in policy ENV04, the local plan, in providing 1.69 hectares of open space. And when officers have had regard to design and character layout issues, touched on the detailed design of the proposal, but in broad terms, the proposals in the same layout are considered acceptable also in terms of scale, heights, and overall are considered to accord with policies in the local and neighbourhood plan. And again, in terms of housing type and mix, the provision of affordable housing is compliant with policies. The proposals are for 25% affordable housing. In terms of other highways matters and access, again, the Highways Authority in this regard, statutory consultee have raised no objections, subject to conditions seeking those off-site highway improvements, which include widening of the 30-mile-per-hour restriction to the junction of Old Hill Road, a series of footpath improvements along Deerham Road to connect the site to the facility and village. In respect of ecology and wildlife implications, again, the impacts, having consulted the relevant authorities, can be suitably mitigated by conditions and on permission if it was granted. And in terms of impacts on residential amenity of neighbours, there's adequate distance to those properties to the north with the intervening highway, but they're well in excess of the minimum requirements and standards. And you'll see from the supplementary report a revised condition with respect to boundary treatments to the eastern boundary of the site with respect to the privacy of those dwellings to the east. In summary, we acknowledge there are a large number of objections. The proposals would, as highlighted, deliver additional housing within a settlement boundary. And officers would highlight there is a previous planning permission on the site, and these are all significant material considerations. And whilst officers acknowledge there is a change to the character and appearance of the site, as I said, it's considered to accord with policies, and the proposals, the application before you does provide adequate infrastructure and enhancements. In terms of overall, it's officers' views that the proposal would accord with the policies and objectives of the local plan, the neighbourhood plan, and those within the NPPF. In terms of proposals overall, it's recommended for approval, as set out in the committee report, subject to those obligations in the 106 to be secured in the Section 106 agreement, and also those revisions to the conditions in this supplementary report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We can return to the big screen. Okay, thank you. I've got David Fowler, who is speaking on behalf of the Parish Council. I'm trying to find it on my screen, sorry. Oh, there we are. Okay, you have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak and to give the views of Mattershall Parish Council. I can assure members that the Parish Council has given this major application a great deal of consideration. Both the Parish Council and Breckland were opposed to this site being developed, and we fully supported your initial refusal. On appeal, outline permission has now been granted, and the Parish Council's position is to ensure that any subsequent full approval would result in minimal adverse impact on the village, and to recognise that there may be some positive opportunities. Our neighbourhood plan acknowledges that limited additional residential development is acceptable to meet our minimum allocation. The Parish Council has been proactive and has engaged with the applicant to discuss their proposals. We respectfully ask that should you approve this application, the following mitigation measures are secured either through a planning condition or via a Section 106 agreement. The provision of a LEAP scheme and associated public open space accessible to the whole village, with a detail to be agreed by the Parish Council. That the long-term future maintenance of the LEAP is secured by means of a legal agreement. We welcome the proposal to include allotments and an orchard. We do have concerns that this provision should meet a certain specification which we have set out in our submission to you. This covers parking arrangements, appropriate fencing and gating, water supply and tree planting standards. And we ask that the details of this provision be agreed with the Parish Council. The Parish Council is keen to see the delivery of a community woodland for the benefit of the whole village. The vision is to see this provided on the land edged blue on the plan. Hopkins and Moore have indicated that they do not envisage a problem with this proposal and would be amenable to transferring the land to either Breckland or the Parish Council. There is clear opportunity for this prominent site to be included in a Section 106 agreement as an area of public open space. We are concerned about the safety of the large attenuation basin and ask that any approval ensures that it is maintained in a safe condition with appropriate safety measures in place. In the interest of highway safety, we request that the speed limit on Dereham Road adjacent to the site is reduced from 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. If bush shelter provision is required, we would ask that the Parish Council be consulted and approve the design with Norfolk County Highways. In the interest of sustainable development, we ask that each new dwelling be equipped with an electric vehicle charging point. We welcome the recommendation in the report of a sum of £84,000 being made available to the NHS and its inclusion within a Section 106 agreement. Finally, we would ask that if you do approve this application, that these mitigation measures be in place prior to first occupation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 2 minutes 57. Well done. Sorry, Mr. Farrell, are you the chairman of the parish council? No. Okay.
Just
That's
the
a
parish
no.
councillor.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I wasn't 100% sure. Thank you. Okay, my next speaker, I've got Nikki Grandy, who's speaking on behalf of the Mattershall Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. Oh, down the bottom. Nicola, it's 3 minutes, please.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Mattershall's neighbourhood plan is not anti-development, but seeks to ensure that development is appropriate to the size, nature and setting of the for housing for 50 houses on this site in 2015 and 2017, and significant long-standing opposition from Mattershall residents. At the time of the successful appeal in 2018, Breckland didn't have a 5-year housing land supply. The inspector was obliged to base his decision on the presumption of sustainable development, and he put more weight on neighbourhood plan policies. Breckland is a new application and must be judged against local and neighbourhood plan policies, which now carry full weight. At the 2018 appeal hearing, Breckland stated that the proposal conflicted with neighbourhood plan policies ENV2, views and vistas, ENV5, distinct villages, and HOU, size of individual developments.
Can I stop you? Nicola, can I stop you there, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about this, but you are breaking up quite a lot now. You started a bit iffy and then it cleared and now it's gone off again. You keep freezing. I'm not sure where we can go with this.
Chairman.
Rebecca.
Chairman, we have. I'm
not sure where you've got to. Anyway,
hold on, Mrs. Grady. We have your statement. So if we've got a better connection,
yes,
we could read it out on your behalf, and then members would be able to hear all the points you want to make.
Okay.
Yes, could we do that, because we seem to have a very. I don't think it's me. It seems a very bad connection, and I've got a lot of heads nodding. Yes, they can't hear it either. So, Rebecca, do you want to read that out for us, please? I'm sorry, Ms. Grandy. I want the members to get all the information, and so I don't want to cancel you out totally, but I'd like the statement to be read out by my planning officer, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, yes, or alternatively, Anna Loke said she could do it.
What, separately or incorporate it in her statement? Anna, can you come on, please?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I know Nikki. She emailed me a slightly updated version to, I think, what Becky's got, but it is full 3 minutes, and I need 3 minutes for mine also.
Okay, no, I'm prepared to take that. I want to make sure we get all the information. I don't want anyone to think that we haven't heard what the various things are. So if you want to do 3 minutes of Nicola's presentation, and I'll stop you, and then I'll let you start again at 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so your first one is on behalf of the Mattershall Neighbourhood Plan Working Group as a presentation only, without your input into that issue.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to start.
Okay, Mattershall Neighbourhood Plan is not anti-development, but seeks to ensure that development is appropriate to the size, nature and setting of the parish and meets local plan requirements for housing. Outline permission for 50 houses on this site was given only after 2 appeals, despite this committee's repeated refusals in 2015 and 2017, and significant long-standing opposition from Mattershall residents. At the time of the successful appeal in 2018, Breckland did not have a 5-year housing supply of land. The inspector was obliged to base his decision on the presumption in favour of sustainable development. he put more weight on national housing need than the contravention of local and Mattershall neighbourhood plan policies. Breckland now has a 5-year supply of land for housing. This is a new application and must be judged against local and neighbourhood plan policies which now carry full weight. At the 2018 appeal, Breckland stated that the proposal conflicted with neighbourhood plan policies ENV2, Views and Vistas, ENV5, Distinct Villages, and House 1, Size of Individual Developments. The inspector found the same contraventions and concluded that the development would lead to a harmful loss of open countryside and would be harmful to the character and appearance of the area. The case officer's report states that the current application conforms in scale, form and layout to that considered at the 2018 appeal, yet he finds no contraventions of our neighbourhood plan. How can he possibly reach such a different conclusion to that made previously by Breckland and the appeal inspector? Why have earlier assessments against our neighbourhood plan been ignored when surely they're of material planning consideration? Furthermore, the density of the proposed development across the built part of the site is not appropriate to its edge of settlement location. At 24 dwellings per hectare, it's about twice as high as the nearby densities, referring only to a density of 15.6 dwellings per hectare across the whole site, including open space, which the case officer does is misleading. This committee has refused previous planning applications on this site for good reason. I urge you to do the same again, given that both Breckland and the appeals inspector previously found significant contraventions with our neighbourhood plan for an application which is to all intents and purposes the same as that before you today. What's the point of community involvement in developing a neighbourhood plan if its policies are ignored or misinterpreted? That's the end of Nikki's.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Are you ready to do straight into yours?
Yep, next bit of paper.
Thank you. Try and change your voice so it sounds like someone completely different.
I'll do my best. Okay.
Far away.
Last week, I visited a lady in Moorfield Road whose back garden was flooded again, caused by sewage escaping from the manhole outside her back door. She described it as a major environmental health problem, which has recently become much worse and more frequent. Anglian Water are aware and have visited the site and cleaned up on several occasions, but no long-term solution has been forthcoming. She's not alone. Many of her neighbours are in the same situation, and there have been dozens of reports of flooding from sewers in Mattershall over the last few weeks alone. The pumping station in Howells Lane, opposite the proposed site, is often having to be emptied to relieve the situation in the short term. Anglian Water have told residents that old pipes need to be investigated, and there is a strong possibility that these have broken down. However, publicly, they're denying responsibility, as is everybody else. It is acknowledged that the LLFA have removed their objection to this development. However, the developer's latest flood risk assessment, parts of which were written in 2014, are written on the assumption that foul water will be discharged into a properly functioning sewage system. Indeed, the FRA repeatedly states that the sewer in Durham Road, and I quote, has capacity for development flows. Has anyone actually stopped to investigate if this is really the case, as recent events would suggest it's not even able to cope with the existing capacity? The development site itself is known to flood on a regular basis. Due to the high water table, water cannot infiltrate downwards, so the proposed drainage system is a watercourse which is simply moving flood surface water from the developed area of the site to the western end of the site, and an area which is already known to be of medium to high risk of flooding. The attenuation basin does not deal with or solve the problem of the vast amounts of water, flood water from outside of the site, which will actually be squeezed into a much smaller area that the parish council want to put trees on, and surely is likely to cause greater problems elsewhere. The very fact that an attenuation system needs to be built and that floor levels should be 30 centimetres higher than predicted flood levels must raise questions, at least raise questions as to whether the site is capable of accepting 50 houses. Committee, given the predicted effects of climate change and the increasing frequency of reported flooding and drainage problems in Mattershall, Can the Planning Committee, hand on heart, be satisfied that what has been tabled in respect of flooding is satisfactory? Can they be certain that the existing flooding and drainage problems have been properly investigated and resolved prior to committing to build 50 more houses? People have complained about flooding and sewage problems in Mattershall for time and time again, but feel that no one is listening. On behalf of hundreds of residents in our village, please refuse this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for covering the other speakers' items as well.
No problem.
Thank you. We now go over to Chris Smith, please, who's the applicant, which is Hopkins and Moore. And Chris, you have 3 minutes as well, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My name's Chris Smith. I'm Development Planner for Hopkins and Moore. Since the submission of this application in April last year, we've developed and refined the detailed proposals now before you in consultation with your officers to produce a development which we feel will be very much in keeping with the character and appearance of the local area. As you will note from the committee report, your officers are now content that we are able to suitably address all the necessary technical and environmental requirements, while similarly meet development plan policy requirements, and including satisfying, as has been mentioned, the Environment Agency, the LLFA and Norfolk County Council Highways Authority. In response to a recent request by the neighbouring landowner, and as has been detailed on the plans and is referred to via conditions 14 and 15 appended to your committee report, we will look to work with officers to agree further more detailed landscaping treatment around the boundaries of the site, including the particular area concerned on the eastern boundary. We're confident the proposals will provide an attractive new development in a sustainable location, delivering 12 much needed new affordable homes, together with extensive areas of new public open space and all the requests for financial contributions towards other essential infrastructure via the usual Section 106 procedure. And these include, as has been mentioned, over £84,000 towards a new replacement health facility for the village, £3,750 towards library services, as has been mentioned, provision of new on-site public open space incorporating the play area, allotments and a community orchard, and the potential transfer of land to the west of the site immediately adjacent to the parish council, as is alluded to by the parish council, for additional public usage. In summary, therefore, we trust that you can agree with your officer's recommendation and that you're able to support the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I go over to Councillor Ian Martin, please, who's one of the ward reps.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Chairman, committee, you have heard there are good planning reasons set out by the planning inspector and by Brackland in its appeal submissions when this site application previously went to appeal. That an application of this size and type causes harm by being in direct conflict with key neighbourhood plan policies ENV2, ENV5 and HOU1. And we ask that you refuse the application on this basis. There's good, solid planning reasons. However, you may feel that you actually require more information before making a decision on this application. You have heard the flooding, and most of the time when we talk flooding, people have also mean sewage. And we have had plenty of floods and sewage erupting in the last 4 weeks to really raise issues as to whether the existing infrastructure can cope with the existing housing, let alone 50 new ones. Similar flooding has occurred previously, and the latest one is now only 4 years after the heaviest one in 2016 previously. So we're no longer looking at 1 in 50 or 1 in 100-year occurrence, but 1 in 4. The local lead flood authority has changed its view, but that was before the last 4 weeks. And they need to be challenged on whether its view still stands and that they can explain to you how this will actually work. Anglian Water must also be held to account because it's the sewage responsibility that needs to be dealt with in this instance. And the sewage station opposite was overwhelmed with surface water this time around. You have heard the Parish Council's requested conditions, if permission is granted. Central to these are the public open space and the community woodland, the latter of which does not appear in any of the conditions of the officer's report before you. However, for the parish council to be able to take these on, this all depends on negotiating an agreement and the money that would be paid to the parish council for the long-term maintenance. None of that has been agreed. I therefore ask the committee to defer a decision until you have the local lead flood authorities and Anglian Water's up-to-date views, and maybe you wish to summon them to appear before you, as you did on Dumpling Green with highways. And we need to give time for the developer and the parish council to actually explore what the costs are and what the money is actually available. Because if the money isn't sufficient, as the parish council has previously demonstrated on another site, it will walk away, it won't take on that additional land, and the community would be lost. And without that, then the PC's original objection is likely to still stand. Finally, Mr. Chairman, please, committee, refuse this application, or at the least, defer a decision until you actually have all the information before you that is critical to making a decision for and on behalf of the local community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You owe me 10 seconds somewhere along the line. We've got Councillor Clowson now, please.
So, Chairman, how long do I have officially?
3 minutes, and that's it.
Thank you. I won't need anywhere near as much as that. So thank you, Chairman. So we're back on the Gladman site, long history, and this has been going on a long, long while, as we all know. So what do we got? We have got the first application refused by this committee, went to appeal. The inspectorate agreed with our decision. And at the time, they were most concerned about the intrusion in the open countryside. We then go again, and so in the meantime, we are producing our local plan. So it's important to note here, because again, the members, the members decided that this was not, I repeat, not a preferred site. So this site did not go forward in the local plan as a preferred option. The members voted against it and supported the parish of Mattershall in that it was never in the local plan or the emerging local plan. In the meantime, Gladman come back in and have another go. So this time, the inspectorate actually went with the Gladman application. Now, if you'd have been in the room as I was, and Ian was as an observer, then you'd have seen the inspector make much of the 40%. Indeed, he said it was the thing that swung the balance, 40% affordable housing. So we now have this silly situation where we didn't want it in the local plan, and Bristol do want it to be developed. So, and now here we go again. And then instead of with them coming in and saying viability, we can't do the 40%, we go down to 25%, it's gone in with a new application at 25%. However, as a new application, it does have to fit with all of our new rules. It does have to fit in with the local neighbourhood plan. So the rules are very, very different indeed. So let's just say that what we are asking you to do is to again look at it and reject it. And as far as the flooding is concerned, I've learned something in this last weekend, that this field has been very regularly subsoiled. Now, you don't subsoil a field unless it's got compaction and or standing water. They're the only two reasons. So we have a known history of flooding. The farmers have known that there is a history of flooding, albeit the tenant farmer has known that, and it has been regularly subsoiled. So I would say that the Lead Flood Authority hasn't had time to look at the latest load of flooding. There is a history here. And oh, by the way, the only other flooding area in Mattershall is one that Bristol approved and this council rejected. So I'm saying, asking you again, please reject this and let Bristol have egg on their face and not us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, it's now open to questions from members. Councillor Clark, Councillor Bowes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very familiar with the history of the different applications of the sites. Couple of questions for Chris Hobson, our officer. First question is the status of the site? Is this now in effect an allocated site? That's my first question. And the second question, in relation to the lead flood authority, which you've gone back to, and I think they've said this is in flood zone 1, does their comment include any reference to any submissions they may have had from Anglian Water and or the Drainage Board? My third point, which is the members of the other members of the committee, is I think there are two issues I might suggest. One is, has the applicant done everything that they can? Is there a constructive relationship with the parish council? Yes. Is there a separate issue of flooding, of any, whether it's surface water, sewage, etc., all those things together in Mattershall generally? So there are two separate things. I've actually spent 10 years looking at flooding issues, and I've just read through again the 2015 flood management strategy and the 2020 updated one. And the moment the flood team no longer look at surface water, and in 2011, in the list of properties that are going to be affected, Mattershall had 60, and they acknowledge that there were problems of blockages, inadequate capacity in the drainage network, and historical misconnection of surface water to the foul sewer network. And obviously our sympathies go to all those people affected in terms of the sewage area. So there's three different components in terms of where the water is coming from and who's responsible for and how up to date it is. But it does seem, I would give credit to the parish council, but also to the applicant. So if you've missed any of those questions, I'll come back again, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Harry.
Chris, you're ready to answer those, yes?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a few there. I'll start. I will need to clarify that last one. But yeah, in terms of the status of the site, it's not an allocated site. It's within the settlement boundary, so it's within the settlement boundary edge red. So in line with policies in the local plan, which seek to encourage development in the settlement boundary, it's in accordance with that. There's no further allocation policy for it. In terms of the LFA, now noting their comments, they don't, from my understanding of reading the comments, they haven't, what they will do, they will assess the submission, the evidence submitted within the application. So they don't, my knowledge, then consult Anglian Water again, and the Drainage Board directly. They will consider the evidence and comments submitted. So, for instance, they've reviewed the previous issues raised in terms of flooding incidents, so they're aware of those. In terms of the final question, can you clarify what that last point was? I understand there's issues from different sources, foul and surface water.
Yeah, my last point was really saying there are two things. There's one is the site susceptible and or suitable to flooding, and the recommendation obviously shows that it isn't. It's flood zone 1. There's two issues, but the second, which is outside the committee's remit, is there may be other issues in the area generally which need addressing. Now, because some of those issues are raising question marks or don't appear to be addressed to the satisfaction of some people in the community, that then throws into question sometimes the due diligence that's been done by officers and Breckland in this report. So it's very welcome what we've heard so far in terms of from the developer, but also the applicant and also the parish council, and it's separating out those two issues. So two wrongs don't make a right. And in terms of surface water management plans, I mean, I've got a meeting with Norfolk County Council officers and Dereham councillors only because they recognise there isn't a surface water management plan, but there are issues in the town of Dereham and surrounding areas, Toffwood and other areas, which one of the members of the committee will know. But in terms of this area, it is certainly true historically that there have been issues about this being low-lying, etc., and deficiencies in the system. When I was involved in commenting on the 291 at Toffwood many years ago, concerns expressed about from Mattershall then about all the waste from Toffwood, as it were, that new development being pumped to Mattershall. So there are questions there which are legitimate and which aren't. Yes, they may not be evidenced, but again, we've been told to take the evidence of not just residents but also local representatives on board. So whilst the site in itself may not be, according to the report, a problem, there is a need for Breckland and other parties who will be listening and watching this to take those things up. Separating out the mass of who's responsible what is difficult, but the fact is I was at the appeals and observer as well, listening, so I can't add to the points there. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I think just to summarise, yeah, in terms of the points, yeah, the proposals were amended following the dismissal at appeal to move dwellings outside of the flood zones 2 and 3, so they're in flood zone 1. That was part of the proposals to prevent that unacceptable impact and risk of flooding. Now, yes, within the most recent scheme, the lead local flood authority are advisors and experts in this, and they've reviewed the proposals again, and yeah, again they've continued to raise no objections, and it is in relation to these proposals. So yeah, the proposals have to be considered on their merits. There are existing issues, obviously, we've seen the historic events, and those have continued recently, but again, the application has to be considered on its merits, and what the lead local flood authority are, the statutory consultee, and advising that the proposals align with the policy and guidance requirements in providing for a positive change in terms of drainage from the site over the existing scenario. And whilst we're not saying there aren't issues, the proposals are acceptable on their merits from a flood point of view. And as I said earlier, that the flood authority, having gone back to them, have said that in terms of the proposals, they're aware of the issues, and their comments wouldn't change again, having regard to those recent instances. In terms of the flood risk, the initial application that was dismissed at appeal, as I said, had those dwellings within those high risk areas, high and medium risk areas. So the application before you now has moved those outside. There are, though, a small number of properties now identified within flood risk. The proposals now are to raise the levels as the applicants have now proposed, to avoid risk to those properties. So in terms of the other matters, yes, there are existing issues, and the relevant authorities will need to deal with those as a separate and wider matter. I think that clarifies those questions.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Bowes, please.
Yes, thank you. I was going to ask similar questions to Councillor Clark around the LLFA and the consultation with the LLFA, and whether they had been consulted more recently since the recent flooding, which Chris has confirmed they have, and that they're still happy. But I think these are sort of dramatic circumstances that we're experiencing, and I mean, could we go back to also the Environmental Agency and Anglian Water? And I don't think they're statutory consultees, but I'd like to, if we could, to have more input from them on this. Then I would like to propose that if we were able to do that we deferred the application to do so.
Rebecca, can you come in and just clarify that, please?
So the lead local flood authority members are your statutory body to advise with regards to matters of flooding and incidents of flooding. You have their advice in front of you. We spoke to them this morning. We've had their response this morning that they've taken into account the most recent instances of flooding. They are aware that there is an issue in this regard. It is not for this application to put right historical matters of flood risk. It is for you as councillors to consider this application with regard to any resultant flood risk from this development. Now, the applicants have submitted significant amounts of information with regards to drainage in this area. That lead local flood authority are satisfied that they can meet greenfield runoff rates. We cannot insist on a response from Anglian Water. To date, they have not responded to us. We have suggested a period of time to allow them a further response, and that a recommendation is made on that basis. The other drainage boards have been consulted and raised no objection, and the Environment Agency raised no objection. So with regards to a deferral, you would need to make a reasonable request on that regard of what additional information we were seeking. And the lead local authority who investigate and provide your statutory advice with regards to incidents of flooding have said they require no further information. They do not need to make any further comments. They stand by their advice of no objection, and that is the assessment that you make today. So I would suggest to you members, deferring the application is not going to get you any further information than what you have in front of you today.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's mention has been made of it being a flood risk zone 1. Well, we need to realise what that is to start with. That is flooding from the rivers and the sea. Now, I don't think Matishall suffers from any flooding from rivers, and I don't think it's too close to the sea. But what we have is historical flooding events caused by development which is already there, and the ground, and the fact that it just cannot, the systems cannot take flood water away. But also with this, I see so many issues here, which basically we're being just told will be sorted out after we give permission. Now, that is surely not the right way to be going in this instance, where there are major issues to be sorted out. It's a bit like the old double glazing salesman who said, well, just sign the form here and I'll fill in the details later. I do not see how we can possibly approve this application when there are so many major issues still to be resolved. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to? Oh, Rebecca, please come back and sort that one. Thanks.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, just to repeat, and I appreciate, don't want to bore members, but it's not up for this application. You must consider this application on its own merits, and you would be leading the council down a road of risk at appeal with any subsequent decision if you consider this application in the context of historical elements of flooding, unless they are directly related to this site, and or do not take the advice of your statutory consultee in this regard. So that's what I was going to say, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Attawell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a number of questions if I can. Chris, the street scene plan that you put up during your presentation, could you put that up on the screen again, please?
Yes, sure.
Okay, just to clarify, because there is a street. That's the one. So the street scene actually, if I've read this right, the existing mature hedge all the way along the boundary of the highway is going to remain and provide screening there, with the exception of a piece of the hedge that's got to be taken out for the road entrance. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There will be a section that will need to be lost for the access. So either side of that new access, yeah, there will be a section lost. But
so that street scene on there is not actually a true reflection, because a lot of those houses are going to be screened by the mature hedge, correct?
There will be parts, yes. So where you see those two cars.
Yeah, that's the road entrance. I appreciate that.
This side will be,
okay. Also, mention was made earlier. I think Mr. Fowler. If we can get back to full screen. Mr. Fowler, I think, from the parish council mentioned about the 30 mile an hour, the existing 40 mile an hour, and that being extended to it's a 30 mile an hour. I think these proposals, looking at all the highway drawings I've looked at, I think the proposal is to extend the 30 mile an hour limit anyway, and to provide. I think there's highways like to put up these entrance gates, highway gates. I think that's all going to be as part of the highway improvement works, bus shelters. I think further up the street, they are proposing to put in more tactile crossings, I think, as well. The boundary treatment, something was said about it'll be a condition that the actual planting scheme and screening on the site would be a condition. My experience, and I hope that's correct on this, if this application was approved, that the parish council would be able to feed into that process and work with the officer and the applicant to get satisfaction of all parties on the screening. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to butt in, Councillor Attewell, absolutely. And we've had the decision notice updated, and it is in your supplementary report to request that the actual developer does consult with the parish council in advance of submitting their discharge of condition applications to allow that two-way conversation to happen.
Thank you. Chris, could you bring up the plan that shows the red development site area and the blue, the land edged in blue, please?
Yeah. You see that?
No, that's the one.
That's the one, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Fowler, from the parish council, could I just ask you a question? Just to clarify, you are seeking to get the piece edged in blue transferred to the ownership of the parish council for woodland. That obviously will take time to mature, but that would screen the whole site on the entrance to the village in the long term. Have I read that right, please? You can take the plan down there, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct, councillor. It's an aspiration in our neighbourhood plan to create a community woodland in the village, and we see this site as being ideal for such purposes. The ownership could be with the parish council or the district council, but obviously we'd like to achieve that.
So the screening there. Also, on any section 106, now my calculation is, if I've read the report correctly, and I've added up all the pieces of open space, the orchard, the allotments, the green open space, that we have 10,692 square metres of open space proposed for this site. And I'd like Becky just to clarify something here. I think in a section 106 agreement, as a general rule of thumb, I know that could change depending on the finish of the allotments and the orchard, etc., that's required. Do we look at a formula of about £8.50 a square metre for section 106?
Currently, the maintenance fee in the section 106 is £8.50 per square metre.
So if
established open space.
Yeah, so if this was transferred, potentially, hypothetically, if this was transferred and the parish council could work with the developer to get the screening they want, the open space, the play area, the allotments and the community orchard, you are looking at potentially just over £90,000 top end that could be transferred to the parish council with the land. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, £8.50 definitely for the on-site open space within the red line. What we are seeking to do with the applicants is, in the event planning permission is granted, we need to assess whether the maintenance for the woodland would equate to the same maintenance as a formal layout of open space, and agree a fee in that regard. But I would expect there to be a maintenance contribution for the woodland, which is reasonable, as well as for the open space, but definitely £8.50 for the designated on-site open space.
Brilliant, thank you. And just to clarify, we're looking at a contribution of just shy of 85,000 for the NHS because the village has got aspirations, and I think the NHS have produced a report. There's a wish to replace the surgery in the village for a new updated medical facility for Mattershall, and this would contribute towards that. Okay, could I just come on to the drainage situation? I do take on board what Councillor Clark said, and I think he's quite right when he says that these issues need to be separated out. We've got a situation where we are looking at the drainage on the development site, but there are historical issues in the village of Mattershall, and those historical issues is a failure. It's a failure of local authorities, it's a failure of utility companies, and there probably needs to be better engagement with landowners to help the surface water drainage in that area. Having said that, I've read extensively the flood risk assessment that's been put forward for this site. I've read the local flood authority, lead flood authority's report, and I actually think that this development will help the drain. It won't solve it, but I think it will help the situation on the site. I read with interest the hydro brake system that's been proposed. I've got experience of those in my own village in Swanton Morley, and that was put in on a site, and it cured flooding problems in neighbouring properties because it does limit the discharge into the water courses around the site. I am content that the surface water runoff on this site is mitigated by the proposals that are here with the swale, the attenuation pond, etc. I do think there is still going to be a problem with the adjacent land because the water all seems to congregate down in that corner. And I think that's got to be, you've got to separate that out from what we're considering here for the application. There is an ongoing problem. Anglian Water need to be involved. But Anglian Water say the problem with their foul drain is the drain's fine. It's when the surface water gets into the system. So there is an inherent problem in Mattershall, but I think this development will help. I definitely think it will help with the surface water drainage if this goes ahead. I have to say, with all that in mind, there was one other thing. On the conditions, Becky, if we were minded to approve this application, could we put in, I think I saw in the flood authority's comments, that they would like detail from the applicant to, before commencement on site, measures to manage surface water during the construction period. Is that something that we could condition, please, to make sure that they have got mitigation measures in, because there will be runoff, any construction on the site, and that would need to be mitigated as well. In conclusion, I would just like to say, this is a dog's breakfast. This whole site historically is a dog's breakfast. It has gone backwards and forwards with Gladman. There's been appeal decisions, but the fact is we've got a site here now which has been determined by an inspector that this site is suitable for development. We have got a site that meets the affordable housing, much has been made about that. The affordable housing allocation on this now meets Breckland Council's local plan policy. I don't think that's something that we can revisit about the 40%, the 25%, we are where we are. And on that basis, because it complies with the local plan and the mitigation measures and the improvements I think that can bring to the village and help the parish actually in some regards with its aspirations, I'm going to support it. I really think we need to get on with this. I think deferment, you're just going to get more of the same answers. I think there's two separate issues. Existing drainage, yes, there needs to be some work done. We really need to push the utilities and the landowners and highways, bang some heads together on that. But as far as this site goes, I think it will improve the situation. And that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more councillors wishing to? Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick one, and thanks to our esteemed colleague there for summing up about the flooding, and it is as you summed up nicely. The other one was the highways footpath. People were saying about they'd like to see a extended footpath from the open space to Old Road. Then that would continue the footpath safely for pedestrians into the village. I don't know if Chris Smith wants to comment on that and say he'll do that, and obviously consult with the parish council over that. It's been recommended by Highways for that.
Mr. Smith, you've been put on the spot.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Actually, that footpath is shown on the layout plan. There's an indicative path that runs along the northern boundary of the site across to the junction with Old Hall Road. It runs adjacent to that. So yes, there will be that linkage put in there. And there's also a formal link on the site to the south to another footpath that runs from Old Hall Lane south of the site from east to west. So both of those footpath links are proposed, yeah.
Yep, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak at all? No.
Chairman,
Okay.
Chairman, can I just clarify? I think there's a lot of discussion about the previous the issues about flood risk and character, and it was just to summarise that there is a lot of history. The first appeal was dismissed for 2 issues in terms of character and flood risk. Now, the flood risk issue was overcome in the subsequent application, and now the outline obviously granted following that and is extant. Now, in terms of the issue appeal raised by Councillor Klaus and others in terms of character, now its officers' views that the proposals are acceptable in terms of the neighbourhood plan and local plan plans themselves as we are today, but also having regard to the extent consent for the site in terms of the outline consent and how the proposals relate to that. So it's in terms of the proposals, as mentioned, it's now its officers' views that the proposals do accord with both the neighbourhood and local plan. Thank you.
Can I just quickly add to that, Chairman, if possible, just to be really clear on that the latest appeal that was allowed was an outline application, and the inspector's very clear in his report that matters of appearance, layout and landscaping would be assessed at reserved matters stage. And at that stage, you had a development outside the settlement boundary. So he was looking at the wider character of the area and the impact on that as a site outside the settlement boundary. Your own local plan has changed that policy text. It has included this land within the settlement boundary, and therefore the principle of having development in this location is established. So the principle of having some development in this location is established. And on that basis, the officer report, the committee report in front of you, then assesses the impact of what the inspector left to the reserve matters, which is now a full planning application. So it assesses the impact on the street scene, the design of buildings, their layout, their scale, their landscaping. And on the basis that the principle of development is established in this location by its location within the settlement boundary, we are saying to you as officers that we consider this development suits the character of the area. So just to clarify that point, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, can I have a show of hands from all the members that you fully understood the presentation and you are prepared to go for a vote?
Everyone, thank you.
That's it. Okay, fine. Before we go to a vote, can I just, as far as committee services are concerned, can I just declare that Councillor Bowes has had to leave the meeting, even though she took part in the early part of the conversation and the presentation. She's not here now to vote. Okay, thank you very much. It's got so dark in here, I'm struggling to read my own writing. So with regards now, members, to a Mattershall application 3PL 2020-0462, your officer's recommendation on this one is one of approval. Julie, can I have a roll call for approval from the officer's recommendation, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilkinson?
4.
Councillor Atterwill?
4.
Councillor Brame?
4.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
4.
Councillor Clark?
4.
Councillor Dale?
4.
Councillor Dygan?
4.
Councillor Gilbert?
Against.
Councillor Martin?
4.
And Councillor Kybird?
4.
Thank you, Chairman. That's 9 votes for approval and 1 against.
1 against. Okay, thank you very much. This item is approved. Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers. Okay. We'll just clear our speakers and then we can continue. Okay, we'll just get rid of Mr. Smith. He's gone. Good. Okay, just check on my screen. I think we're okay. Okay, fine. Moving on, item 11 is applications determined by Executive Director of Place. They are there for your information. If you had anything to raise on that, you should have done it 2 days ago. Item 12 is appeals decisions, again for your information only. And with that, I would like to close this meeting.